Ladies and gentlemen, get in here. Welcome in. Please share this out on X. Hit the like. Let's get in here for a Publicly Buzzed live Thursday night show. I appreciate everyone for coming in. And yeah, let's try this one more time.
Let's rock.
Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in here. Publicly Buzzed Live is on the air. I appreciate everyone for being patient there in the chat. I totally messed up. I thought I was live. I was rocking and rolling. I was going in deep. And it was, I feel like it was a very good open, actually. And I look over all of a sudden and I see, did you forget to hit the live from Dizzy? And yes, I didn't forget to hit the live. I just fucked up the stream key. Wow, get the hell in, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming in. I appreciate it. Yeah, we're going over some wild stuff here tonight. Everyone, of course, is familiar and aware of what's been going on in New Orleans. We're going to be looking at an interview tonight with someone by the name of Sarah Adams, who is a former CIA targeting officer. I'm interested in checking this out because I've been seeing some different clips with her in an interview with somebody by the name of Shawn Ryan, somebody from the Shawn Ryan show. I'm unfamiliar with Shawn Ryan completely. I don't really know how Shawn Ryan leans, whether that's left or right. I'd imagine it's more right with this type of show. But I don't really care, actually. I want everyone to kind of come in here with their opinions, with everyone to kind of share that and let us and share that with everyone that's going to be coming through the chat and just be open. And because right now we're living in some really wild, honestly scary times with what happened in New Orleans and also what happened the same day on New Year's with what happened in Las Vegas in front of the Trump Tower, blowing up the Cybertruck, even though they look like they're completely unrelated. Even though that one seems to be even maybe a little bit freakier from some of the stuff that's coming out. You know, the guy that's an absolute ISIS terrorist that hit Bourbon Street in New Orleans. And you can almost make sense of that because he's been radicalized by this, indoctrination. He's been indoctrinated by Islam, right? But the one in Vegas is a lot more confusing. But what I'm interested in right now is kind of seeing, again, from someone by the name of Sarah Adams, a former CIA targeting officer with extensive, I'm reading some info that I have over here on the side. Thanks everyone for coming in here. Extensive experience in national security, particularly related to terrorism. And apparently, this is an interview from about 2 weeks ago. And now we have this terrorist event that has unfolded within the United States. And it seems like we're living in really scary times. And we're going to be having a new president and an inauguration here soon. And I'd imagine within the next month and all the way through the next few years, we're going to be seeing a lot more of this really high, violent type of situations unfold in different American cities. Let's see who's in here right now. First and foremost, just a crazy Jen coming through here. Laura, one thing I need to do is get you folks over here so we can all talk, I just want to see everybody's pretty faces. Everybody right here. Holly Berry's coming through here. Pammy's coming through here. Dizzy's coming through here. Laura's in the house. Johnny Archer's in the house. Brooklyn! Be modding for me here a little bit here tonight. Shelly's in the house. Guys, yeah, we're about to be going right into this, and I know the Buzz Nation is here, and everyone's hanging and banging, and I really appreciate everyone for coming in here. But yeah, I totally just hit live. Get you a drinky poo here tonight also. You're going to need it. We're all going to be going into some serious stuff. And this is a long interview. I'm not going to sit here and say we're going to watch the entire thing. I'm going to be doing this Publicly Buzzed style, guys. I'm going to be watching this. I'm going to be doing a lot of pausing, a lot of bullshitting. It's going to be what I'm really feeling in that moment as I'm watching this. So, I don't want you guys in the chat to either pull punches. Mandy's in here, hell yes. Now, one thing I want to shout out tomorrow. Now, look in your emojis. Anybody that's membered up. We got some Chris Dewitt emojis. Now, tomorrow night, my boy, Chris Dewitt, is coming through. Hopefully, Dandy Savage. Now, Dandy Savage, Dan, my brother, might not be here tonight. Thursdays is a lot for Dan. He's got a lot going on. Like I said, he's an actual professional, and I just play one. Chris Dewitt, my brother, is going to be coming on here tomorrow night. All the way from Vegas, live and in living color. We're going to be watching Rescue 911. Now, who remembers that television show? Probably from the 90s, particularly. It was a wild fucking show. So, and of course, the will is in play here. I'm going to be keeping an eye on everybody. And the first one on here tonight, the man that's coming through as a guest tomorrow, Chris Dewitt. Get the hell in here.
Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind?
And that was one of the, I thought I was live. I really did. Chris Dewitt, thank you so much, man. Appreciate it. And tomorrow night's going to be a must see. We're going to be having anybody that doesn't know when Chris comes through. He doesn't play around. He usually has a great time as well, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be good. Coming through right behind that is Pammy for beard oil. Thank you very much. The beard's getting out there as well. It's getting pretty big. Pammy with a $4.99 next on the wheel. Thank you so much, Pammy. Absolutely one of the most lovely human beings I could ever ask for in the Buzz Nation. Banging. Every night. And, of course, everything up above is going to be in play as well. I will be checking out the old Gmail, whether that's going to be Cash App, Venmo. All the stuff is wide fucking open. But let's jump in here, folks. Again, a lot of wild stuff is going on. And, yeah. It's going to be a beardy good time tomorrow night. That's one thing that's going to be going down. So thanks, everyone, for coming in. Like I said, if you haven't shared it out, please do so. I didn't want to say this. Yeah, I was looking at a little bit of the credentials here for Sarah Adams. CIA career. Adams worked as an intelligence analyst and targeter for Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, where she was involved in identifying, assessing global terrorist threats. She joined the CIA in 2006, and worked in various roles, including being a lead targeting analyst. Now up here as well, I was trying to get a little bit more information about the host of this show, Shawn Ryan, who I don't know a lot about or anything basically at all. Shawn Ryan is the host of the Shawn Ryan Show, and this is from 2 weeks ago again, folks, a podcast where he interviews a wide range of guests telling real stories about real people with various walks of life. Now, I actually really enjoy that's the type of show that I personally, like to listen to. I know Joe Rogan is another very polarizing individual within the world currently. One thing I really enjoy and like about Joe Rogan is that he will have people from both sectors, from the left or the right, or just from all over the place, and he will talk to them just like the regular people. So yeah, this will be interesting to see. Shawn Ryan is a former U.S. Navy SEAL and CIA contractor. He served in the military for over 14 years with multiple combat deployments across different operations. So this should be pretty interesting. I think we're gonna, if nothing else, we're gonna be entertained, and I don't know if that's gonna be good or that's gonna be bad. So we'll see. Thanks everyone for coming in, and let's see what we get here. Let me set up the sound. And again, if you have never watched a live watch along with me, Steve, here at Publicly Buzzed, you're either gonna love it or you're gonna hate it. So.
Sarah Adams, welcome back.
Great to be here.
We have a love-hate relationship. I love seeing you and having you on the show, and then every time you leave, I'm pissed off about everything you're talking about. So we had earlier this week, actually, was this week, you posted something about the Pentagon getting pissed off at you and sending you an email that they don't appreciate you disseminating open source information.
Fuck yeah,
and that you're not doing it through the proper channels. So we're going to dive into that. That's why thank you for rushing out here. I wanted to get that immediately, and so we're going to crank this out in like 3 days. But anyways, and then we got a whole slew of other topics to go over, but for those of you that don't know, this is your third appearance on the show. Mm-hmm. We already have a fourth scheduled for later in 2025. But Sarah Adams, co-author of Benghazi, Know Thy Enemy, a cold case investigation. Former CIA officer, Libyan crisis before, during, and after the 9/11 attacks, counterterrorism analyst, targeter for the CIA, senior advisor on the Select Committee on Benghazi, NGO official working across multiple conflict zones, including Afghanistan, Ukraine, and Sudan, known to be 10% humanitarian, 90% warlord.
That's kidding. Me.
But
before we even get started here, Cammy coming through here and being absolutely insane with the generosity. Cammy, thank you so much. Let me show you a little bit of love here because wow. Give me the loot. And if you're not familiar again with Publicly Buzzed and the Buzz Nation, then Yeah, you're going to be familiar after this episode because, we go pretty hard and our folks go pretty hard. New members here who have the opportunity to see some really dank content in the video section. Miss Jessica NB, Half Irish, Eyes on Lies, Doc, naming them right now. Roller Derby Jammer, great fucking name, crazy name. Joanne Dubose, I'm probably ruining that. Dubois, I bet it's Dubois. Joanne Dubois. Oksana Luke. Here we go. Oksana Luke. Let's go. I definitely got that. I nailed that one. Oh, dude, this one. I know this name from the past. I haven't seen her in a while. Noir. Amthai Street Noir. Welcome in here, girl. Thank you for coming in. PK next. And then Gwynny Bile. Holy shit, you guys were not making it easy tonight. My God in heaven, what is happening?
I'm telling you like it is, baby.
Well, if you don't know, also, you need to know, because when you come through here, we don't fuck around.
You gotta fight for your right
to party! And even if that means the end of the world, which is kind of what this episode is potentially about, terrorism around the United States and the world, quite fucking frankly. But before that, what the fuck are we out here doing? We're fucking partying, baby.
But
we'll be partying into the fucking into the sunset of doom.
I heard you mention that I just hired this guy, my new head of production. You said he looks like a terrorist. Please don't kill him. I really, really need him here. So if you could just refrain from that.
That one name I can't get.
That would be great.
It's dark in here, and he walked in.
Oh, boy. You don't have his address yet, do you?
Oh, I could have it by the end of the day if I really wanted it.
Perfect. Well, anyways, so let's just start with the Pentagon stuff. That I read your
Let's get scared to death.
Actually, let's start with open source information, just for the audience. Can you describe what open source info is? Open source intelligence.
Yeah, I mean,
we got a lot of people in here tonight because everyone is scared to death. Everyone's like, what's happening?
A lot of people get confused about this. I've even noticed in our past interviews, right? So like our Benghazi investigation, we've collected this entirely ourselves, right? So we are the ones on the ground getting the information. So it's obviously not classified channels, right? We're not going to foreign militaries. We're not going to the intelligence community and getting this information. So it's publicly available, and we can basically share it with whomever we want because it's completely unclassified. So what we do is when we get threat information, we pass it to where it belongs. Sometimes a threat is against a foreign government, so we'll send it to maybe like the ambassador at the embassy in Washington, D.C. And then sometimes a threat is against us, and so we recently got some threats against U.S. embassies. So we've been reaching out to the embassies to let the ambassador know, and then of course to let the RSO know, right? The regional security officer who would be in charge of security at those embassies, to let them know. And so when I reached out to one of them in Africa, I got a nasty gram back from the Pentagon that I didn't go through formal channels to share the information, which is ironic because it's unclassified. But the crazy part is they didn't ask anything about the threat. They didn't say, anything about the sourcing, where we got it from. They didn't show any concern at all for the personnel at the embassy. They just cared that I gave them something.
Well, I don't understand how the Pentagon would not be concerned with the safety of Americans at an American embassy, and the only thing they're concerned about is the information that you're collecting open source.
Exactly. And remember, there's DOD personnel. There's 100% DOD personnel at the embassy I'm talking about. So that's the crazy part, right? Instead of just reaching out to me and saying, hey, this is really interesting information. Can we work together? We'd love to hear what you have. Come sit down with our team.
One big thing that I think is happening majorly right now from all, really, I mean, if you get into it's almost impossible to do this without getting political here, but I mean, nobody's communicating correctly. Like, everybody has stuck their heels so deeply into the sand behind them that they can't think about the future and the betterment of the American people, and not only the American people, but their own livelihood and their families. Like, everyone is taking these staunch, crazy positions, and they refuse to back down from them. And you take, again, going just on only kind of with the terrorist aspect of it, of what happened in New Orleans. Again, I'm going to keep probably bringing up what happened in Vegas, but it's still very confusing and doesn't really make as much sense as what happened in in Louisiana, in New Orleans, and even it doesn't make any sense. You can't look at that and think this guy left that day and he wanted to kill so many different people. But you look at all the different folks that do these crazy acts, right? And you see people leave behind these letters, and you ended up finding out that they've been radicalized by this, that, or the other. And in this case, it's ISIS, right? It's one of maybe the top craziest, worst organization in the world that does harm. And when you spread that ideology mixed with the religion, that comes with that, and you have folks that are willing to die, and in the afterlife, they think that they're already going to be taken care of, how that religion thinks. I'm not trying to go too deeply into it. I'm not trying to be disrespectful at the same time. But when you have people that are so extreme that they are willing to hurt and kill others' livelihoods and ways of living, which is, in a lot of ways with freedom in the American way, it gets very fucking scary. And just from a stance of folks that are in charge, and let's take that press conference yesterday after this event happened. I believe it was yesterday. Yeah, that was one of the scariest press conferences I've ever watched, because the disconnect between that room of people, the reporters, and the folks, all of these official folks, including the governor, that are up there, just sucking each other's dicks, just kissing each other's asses, just to do it, just to say. I mean, those folks wanted answers. We, the American people, wanted answers in that moment, and we're starting to get them trickling through. And I get that there's an investigation still ongoing, but my major point at the beginning of this little rant here was that there is such a disconnect now, that it's affecting people. And I know the internet, and there's all these different factors, and we're living in a completely different world than we were just even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, much less 20 years ago, and so forth. But it's scary, man.
Now, let's see how we can get ahead of this threat. Like, they got mad that I gave it to the State Department, which is who you would give a threat to the embassy to.
What can you talk about the actual threat that the Pentagon doesn't seem to think is important? Right there,
that perfect. And this is exactly what this is going to be, guys. There's going to be a lot of breaks, a lot of pausing. If you don't like that, I get it. Usually after I do review shows like this or reaction shows, and the comments after are just like, wow, why are you watching this? I'm not going to get on a tangent here, but to the point here of Bell again, the police chief said it was terrorism and the FBI lady said it wasn't. Out the gate, we're already getting misinformation from official outlets, much less all of the unofficial outlets that are blending in all of this other bullshit. We're living in very scary, dangerous times. And I would say, before you jump on anything and ride that horse into the sunset, chill out for a second, see if anything changes. I am guilty of that 100%. I'm trying to get better at it all the time. I'm trying to be transparent and open about it as well when I do fuck up. I want people to know, and I'm trying to correct it. I think that we need to be in a position where that becomes the norm on the major outlets. It's not something that we try to hide or, oh, we fucked up, no one can know.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked previously about Al-Qaeda planning embassy attacks. Obviously, I've talked about they're planning an attack in Bamako in Mali. So this is another location in Africa where they're planning the attack. I don't want to give up everyone I know because, then you get into sourcing. Obviously, everyone I know I will pass to the U.S. government, especially the State Department. So I don't hold on to threat reporting. But it's just Al-Qaeda has all these waves of attacks planned, okay? If you've read our October 7th Know Thy Enemy report, this all started with the Hamas attacks, right? That was one of Al-Qaeda's planned attack, and we can talk more about that one later. So they have kind of like these waves against Israel. And then they have like waves against Europe, waves against us, waves to create the Islamic Caliphate, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of the African plotting, for example, is the waves to create the Islamic Caliphate. So the Islamic Caliphate is basically, obviously, Afghanistan, Syria. That's why they've trained a lot. What's going on right now, Iraq. They're in a dream world. They have India on it. And then it's like all of North Africa. And then in a future phase, it then goes up into Spain, right? Like in the olden days. So it's just all their plots they have in place to put into motion these elements. And so their embassy plots, for example, are they have some in Africa, and then they have some in Europe, and then they have some in the Middle East, all for a different purpose. The Middle East is to push us out for the caliphates. The Africa is to push us out for the caliphates. And then the Europe, right, is just to go after, and then that'll go in with the Homeland attack too, but the Europe is just to target the U.S. for its involvement in the Middle East.
Do they have?
I wanted to stop. I didn't want to cut her off again there, but I did want to pop this up right here. Laura coming through. Beautiful Laura, amazing member here in the Buzz Nation. A lot of people looking for a home, as it were, and finding it in radical groups of all kinds. You know, that's one really scary thing today with social media and, you know, teens and even people coming into their 20s, even at this point, right? Like, I feel like we're in a different world than even when, you know, I'm 38 years old, than even 20 years ago when I was just becoming an adult, right? When you're just becoming out of high school into that era, into your early 20s, and you feel like you know everything, right? Like, there's so many young folks that are so fucking lost today, I feel like, that they'll latch on to anything and everything, and, you know, whether that's an ideology or whether that's a religion, you know, one and the same in some aspects. But, you know, it's scary as fuck because it's so easy when you're young to fall into something like this. And one thing that I keep seeing now, you know, I'm lucky that I really didn't start getting into politics until I was older, which has been my 30s actually, because I see so many people that, and it's even older folks, but, you know, and I get that way as well, but like, we've got to figure out a way to get past this, you know, this is my team, this is my side, like, I'm only with this because, you know, there's so many bad actors that are taking advantage of folks from these sides now because there's financial gain involved. Like, you know, there's people that I enjoy listening to or see that aren't necessarily on this side or that side. They're basically in the middle trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. And I try to put myself in that position now.
Do they have a priority list?
They don't exactly have a priority list. Like, they're all waves and some can be concurrent. What matters is how long it takes to train attackers, right? So
What's up, Rachel?
The Hamas attacks was like less than 1,500 guys, right? They actually initially planned to train them from August 7th,
I'm old.
2022 to October 7th, 2022. They ended up pushing the attack a year, and so they ended up with more training, which helped the attackers because of Zawahiri's assassination. So then the U.S. homeland, for example, they want to use 1,000 terrorists, right? So that took time to put the 1,000 through the pipeline. Syria, they trained 10,000 terrorists to send to Syria. It takes time to put 10,000 terrorists through the pipeline, right? So it depends on the size and the camp capacity and then the type of training, right? Are you putting them through suicide bomber training? That's its own camps, and that's about 20% of the camps.
Literally
they run.
suicide bombing
Are you putting them through
training?
advanced urban warfare? So it just depends on what camp you're going to, and then even some of the camps are broken
For the
down
greater
by
good, right? Like, these people are for, you know, if I can take out 5 people by myself, that's 5 less of these fucks, right? Like,
ethnicity. Like, they might not put Libyans in the same camp
God,
as they put Somalians or Syrians. So some camps are broken down if you're Arab or not. So it really is just going to depend on those capacities.
You know, these guys, I remember, I think it was you that posted a video of an Al-Qaeda training camp, and it was almost like a display. It looked like a well-done YouTube video of skills. Is that common?
Yeah, but that's
that
a
was
step
like-
down. So
That
that's,
was really...
yeah, you can tell she knows her
that's
shit. Right?
Taliban. Those are the Taliban camps. So we can't get those kind of videos out of the Al-Qaeda camps. As you can imagine, you can't even bring phones into the Al-Qaeda camps. So yeah, so Al-Qaeda is even a level above those.
I mean, I'm going to overlay that video for the audience to see just how sharp these guys are getting. I
Right.
mean, that's really good.
Well,
When I
remember-
saw that, it scared the shit out of me.
Remember, their life is they train all the time.
Yeah.
So if that's all you're doing all day long, I mean, you're going to get really competent at it. And then they have different emotions behind it too. And, you know, different beliefs and the religion behind it too, which
Yeah,
makes
it's
you
the
more devout.
Islamic faith.
And then we had a little brief discussion about suicide, the invisible bomb vests downstairs. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's kind of one of those things that keep you up at night, right? You know, when we're talking about the threats to the homeland, you know, if you subscribe to the newsletter, Shawn Ryan's newsletter, go to
Yeah.
Vigilance Elite.
So for everybody that doesn't know already, Sarah writes a weekly intelligence report, all things terrorism. It's in the Shawn Ryan Show newsletter. You can go to Shawn.
That sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Just a crazy gin when people have nothing left to lose and think they are going to be rewarded beyond belief for atrocities. It's effing scary. And we see so many people today that seem to be on that trajectory of life.
RyanShow.com.
Or an end of life, rather.
There's a sign-up link. It'll be in your inbox every Monday.
So we first talked about what they call the invisible bomb in the newsletter, and basically it was highlighted in December, just this last December, and it was Al Qaeda's in the Arab Peninsula, so their branch in Yemen, right?
Thanks everyone for hanging out.
Basically, we're showing off. It's really interesting. The video got taken down right away, and then I think most people in the U.S. didn't even see it. So like TSA completely ignored putting out the actual piece of the video that mattered. And so the big piece of the video was teaching terrorists how to make a bomb that goes through a magnetometer. So, you know, like most airports in the world, you don't have that weird hand scan thing. You just go through a random metal detector. So this bomb basically goes through the metal detector, okay? So they were showing it off then. Well, now Al-Qaeda's advanced and it's in a suicide vest. But the interesting part is it doesn't just go supposedly through the metal detector. They made it with components dogs aren't trained on to sniff. So if you say, okay, well, we'll up our security and put more dogs, Al-Qaeda's saying, well, we've defeated that too. And this is the type of vest they plan to use potentially in their homeland attack that's coming up. So it's very concerning because we aren't prepared for that. I mean, most of the buildings you go into, even if they have some sort of thing, it's already defeats that.
I mean, I don't think we're prepared for anything that's coming.
Right, we're not.
I mean, do we have any preparations at all? I mean, from what I've seen, we have no preparations.
Low light recovery, get in here.
More about the funding.
Get the hell in here.
I mean, we're funding our own demise here. I mean, have you seen any positives? Is anybody doing anything?
No, and actually, Al-Qaeda makes a joke out of the fact that they move the money we give to the Taliban to the camps that train the homeland attackers, right? So it's almost like an insider joke, like, yes, we are forcing America to fund their own attacks. So that is the plan, too, that the money will go back to us and our government. And then that makes Americans also look at our government like it's an inside job. You knew it, right? And so Al-Qaeda is going to play that game, which is really interesting. Al-Qaeda found the Building 7 conspiracy stuff fascinating. And they have actually had discussions about how we could do ruses and bring in the Building 7 people to make them blame their government more. So they're actually...
Dude, and good to Gamby's point right here, this is going to make you paranoid probably. Like, I already get into that. You know, I try to, at night, I try to watch something, you know, funny or, you know, wrestling related, whatever, like really makes you happy deep inside. Because the world is very scary. But I do like to learn and know about what's happening. The older I get, the more I kind of like... I want to know, you know what I mean? Like, I find in my life that, like, I will find folks that don't want to get deeper or they don't want to talk about it or, you know, what's the point? There's nothing that we can do. And I get that aspect also, and that's maybe ultimately true at the end of the day. But, like, I still kind of, like, want to know and use my personal logic to see if I can figure out what the hell is happening.
Been looking at our conspiracies and targeting those people for the homeland attack. So basically, those people almost back Al-Qaeda as revolutionaries and rebels and heroes against our government. Kind of like how the Hamas supporters do it.
All right, so we have a list of stuff to go down here. I think since we're on funding the Taliban, let's start there. But, you know, you broke that news first. You broke $40 million a week was going to the Taliban, funded from State Department to all these different NGOs. Then our mutual friend Legend came on. He broke that it was actually $40 to $87 million a week. Then, you know, we're also, Scott Mann has confirmed it, former Green Beret Lieutenant Colonel, retired. Then
the fact so many people in the chat already kind of know about both of these individuals is very interesting to me. I mean, you know, I don't go down a lot of these roads sometimes because I don't want to make stuff like weird, you know, for the chat. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think if people are just like adults and can have the conversations without making it, you know, tribal and, you know, it's a me against you, I think that's the way.
Me and Scott went to Vienna.
And dude, so many creators do that on purpose. Like, so many creators out the gate, they start out from this base, so they're just like, oh, it's us against them, you know, fuck them. Dude, we're all fucking just people trying to fucking get through this thing.
Interview Masood, who is the, you know, for everybody that hasn't seen that, that's the leader of the commander of the Afghan resistance. And he confirmed it as well. And
people that aren't actually trying to figure
we've actually
stuff out.
Put a petition out I just looked at it this morning, has 382,000 signatures. I'm going to link the petition below again to spin that out again. And we sent that to McCall. Nothing. From what I understand, not one thing has been done. Why do you think Congressman McCall hasn't done it? It's because, I see these reports he was drunk at the airport. Maybe he's just too drunk to actually do anything. Or maybe he's too busy. As the other story I hear about him all the time is the insider trading shit. Has he done anything? Anything at all?
No, the problem is, it's kind of like they bring these people in front of Congress, they give them 5-minute sound clips, right? They make a little bit of news off it, but there's no then action, or there's no plan to do any accountability. And then they say, yeah, Americans, we did what you wanted. We brought Tyler Andrew Vargas on, right? But what has he done for him since it happened, right? And this is the big problem with Congress. People say, these Congress people aren't doing their jobs, but they keep voting them back in, right? Like, we complain about them, but no one's actually holding their feet to the fire to do their job. I honestly don't think we're going to get anything effective against the Taliban, right? I mean, your congressman, Representative Burchett, he put the money in to stop the bill to stop the money going to the Taliban. It's sitting in the Senate. I don't think anyone's picked it up. Nancy Mace tried to do the bill to actually designate the Taliban a terrorist organization. I heard a number of Republican Congress people reach out to her and gave her a hard time about it. So that's completely dead. We can't even get our Congress people to call them a terrorist group, and they're beheading people.
Why? What's behind that?
My theory is we have some people who haven't thought this through because of the Ukraine war, and they think we can especially use someone like Sirajuddin Haqqani as a counter to Russia. That there's no other explanation for the amount of money we're putting into this, because it's not just up to $87 million a week. That's only the money we fly into Kabul. Right? We send money other ways. One really great example is we fund the Taliban's political office in Qatar. That's not the 87 million. There's at least 10 million that we just pay their operating expenses a month.
Dude, this chat is so fucking refreshing right now. Like, you guys are blowing my mind. Honest to God.
Yeah, we've been doing that since 2013. So this is not a new thing we've been funding the Taliban, right? We were funding them while they're killing our soldiers.
Dude.
I just don't. Where's it hung up in the Senate? Have you heard any?
Well, I think
who's holding it up?
Well, I don't know if someone's holding it up. Basically, a senator, hopefully a grouping of them,
so
are supposed to pick it up,
like,
and then they shepherd it through the process,
bullshit.
like they sponsor it. I don't think we've seen anyone pick it up to sponsor it.
When I started podcasting, I had no.
We're not going to be watching. Not going to be watching that.
It's getting really hard to find the truth. Contributor to here on the sheet broke on terrorist organizations throughout the world are up to. And here's the best.
Right, Hibatullah Akhundzada. We found out. So.
Well, then.
Well.
Here we go. Sorry.
What else should I be asking you about funding the Taliban?
Another thing is, just a couple updates from last time.
Sometimes I shy away from this stuff, but yeah, I mean.
But, we
I
found
think it's
out,
interesting.
so the Taliban has a supreme leader, right? Hibatullah Akhundzada. And we found out his budget just for his office is $48 million a year. Think about that. It's a Taliban commander. That's just the budget for his office, like to run. How much is this? How much do you pay to
48 million?
So we actually basically counted kind of the bags of money that go to him, from these weekly deliveries. And he gets a small cut compared to like Sirajuddin Haqqani, who probably gets 5-6 times what he gets. But we're giving him about $3 million a month. So we're almost funding his entire office. The U.S. government is with counterterrorism dollars, right?
Holy shit.
The problem with this is we're basically playing both sides of the Taliban, and they're playing a ruse on us. So Hibatullah is what you call the Kandahari Taliban. That's just that original Taliban that Mullah Omar was in, that founded the Taliban in like the mid-90s, okay? Then you have the Haqqani network, right? Sirajuddin Haqqani, his father was Jalaluddin Haqqani. We famously backed him during the Mujahideen era. So
yeah, dude, she's blowing my mind with her
these are
memory.
kind of two of the senior leaders besides.
She don't have notes right now, bro.
And the U.S. plays them off of each other, but they don't. We think we're effectively playing them off of each other, but they communicate almost every day through Telegram. They do all their approvals together. They share information, but they use this fake kind of battle between them. So when they sit down with the Americans, they can say, oh yeah, here's the political crisis going on between the Kandahari Taliban and the Haqqani Taliban. And then America wastes a ton of time on that. And then they ignore the terrorism. They ignore, all the murders going on, the apartheid against the women, right? So they're basically making us focus on an issue that doesn't even exist.
Wow.
Oh, and
There's
then
a lot
one
of
other
that.
thing too that's really interesting.
U.S. politics
so,
up there.
You know how we have old man
Just live.
Jalaluddin Haqqani, right? He's one of the most famous people at the time. He has a brother. His name is Khalil. Okay, so this is Siraj ad-Din's uncle. So his job in the Taliban is he's the head of refugees. So he has this really interesting scheme. We've put a lot of work into it since last time I was here. And what he does is he goes to basically the pot of money that we give for humanitarian. So this isn't the counterterrorism dollars, because the money that 3 million Haibatullah gets is our counterterrorism dollars. Well, Khalil goes right after the humanitarian dollars. And what he does is say, he collects 5 million a month in this one that we ran down. So he goes and he says, I need 5 million a month. This money goes to Afghans returning from Pakistan to be resettled in Nangarhar. What he really does with the $5 million is he gives it to basically another one of his family members, Abdulaziz Haqqani, and he brings it and drops it off at Al-Qaeda training camps. And that's our humanitarian dollars. And so they're basically lying and saying it's going to refugees.
Bro.
And I guess it is. It's going to foreign fighters from foreign countries. There's Libyans in these camps. But it just goes and gets delivered directly to terrorist camps.
Like we're funding fights against ourselves at this point. Like,
how do we've abandoned the Afghan people. We're funding our own demise. Mm-hmm. What would you like to see? I mean, do you think we should be? I feel really bad for our allies over there, that we trained alongside with, we fought with, for 20 plus years. And we just left them out to dry, left all of the intelligence there, left the biometrics, left their addresses, left their fingerprints, left their names, and they're just getting assassinated in record numbers. And, how do you think we should be funding the NRF?
So I think we should fund a coalition of the resistance. Mm-hmm. So if you just do the NRF, in my opinion, and I hope I don't upset people, you can't win, right? The NRF is mostly the Tajiks. You also have to bring in the Pashtun resistance and then, the Hazaras. Like, you need a resistance of the different ethnicities and groups. That's how the Libyans actually did it and were successful, right? So you have to have a coalition or like a external government formed. And I think that's what we fund. And then we're funding multiple pieces of the resistance because each of them have different access in different areas, right? Mm-hmm. Each of them will be successful in different ways. Even the women's movement alone, right, has its own insider things you can take advantage of, right? So I do think we shouldn't pick just one resistance group. We should tell them, come together and, and we're here to back you.
That's after my interview with Masood, I dug in a little bit more, and I didn't, Scott did, and you did, and you guys are the ones that feed me all that information, but it sounds like that, are they working together at all yet? Because it seems very compartmentalized, and it is, they need to get their shit together. It's getting a little frustrating.
Yes, they need to get their shit together, but I do think privately they do work a little closer. They have a public thing they do once a year. It's a Vienna meeting. It's not enough. I do see a little more collaboration between groups than people see, but I do see a lot of them undercutting each other. They do a lot of gossip, right? Like, this person works with the Iranians, this person works with the Russians, right? And they're not thinking, hey, we're a united front against the Taliban, like our near-term goal is to defeat the Taliban, because even some of them are focused on their regions, and they might not even want to be Afghanistan if the Taliban falls. They might want their own region, right? So we don't have a catalyst yet to even pull all of them together, unfortunately. At least in the Libyan revolution, every single person wanted Gaddafi dead, and every single person, even the terrorists, right, were like, our goal, our immediate goal is to take him out, right? And they all came together with that immediate goal, but we don't actually have something like that in Afghanistan. And I think that's one of the complaints that has always occurred over the years. There are even pieces within, you know, the Afghan community that have always downplayed the Taliban. So when I caught the number 2 of the Taliban, Mullah Baradar, right? So we caught him in Pakistan. He was in Pakistani custody. Well, when the Afghan government reached out to us, they didn't reach out to render him and put him in Bagram. They reached out and said, you need to release him. Why did you detain him? So think of how that makes the government look at Afghans. It's like, well, you don't really think that the Taliban's that much of a threat. You're asking them to release the operational leader, the number 2 of the Taliban, right? So we still have this problem where a lot of people still sit at the table with the Taliban, right? Khalilzad's really great example. So we also need to do something with these Taliban sympathizers because they're going to keep undercutting any kind of resistance. And I do think they're a part of keeping people split too. So yeah, they all have to come together. And, you know, I've honestly
like there's 100% these like warmongers that are within, I think probably all branches of government all around the world that are like, they're probably profiting from keeping the wars ultimately going. Like, that's what's really scary. Like, the people are so fucking greedy. Individuals are so greedy that they would fuck over large groups, generations of people for their personal satisfaction. Like, and we're seeing that over and over and over again. And we've seen that, I guess, through history and time. And, you know, that's just, you know, more often than not, you see a crook than you see a hero. You know, someone that would actually be wanting to help other folks. Yeah. Oh, man.
To people. So, you know,
but the folks that want to keep this the endless wars just going and going and going. But now stuff is so fucked up, you know, like what she's basically going into here. Like, you've got people that are messing with the Afghans that are from all walks of life, whether that's with Russia or within the United States or, you know, I'm sure within Asian countries or with like China. Like, I don't think there is an ultimate end to the wars that we have just been perpetuating for fucking literally centuries at this point, or a century.
I'm just planning a homeland attack, and I've actually said to people in the resistance, if that attack happens and you guys haven't come together and you can't show us you're a capable force, we're going to Pakistan, right? I'm going to call up the Pakistanis and say, I'm going to give you a lot of money to take out Hamza Bin Laden. I'm not going to call the resistance because you guys are infighting and you didn't come together. So I do think they need to come up with a plan. Even in Haiti, after those gangs took over, like right away, they're like, oh, we made this interim council, right? Like, that matters to the West. It might not matter to the people fighting and doing attacks
come to the doomsday
Taliban, but you need some sort of united front to get recognition.
Who do you envision would take control of that? Would it be Masood? I
would like a power sharing agreement. Obviously, you know, I like NRF. I really like General Zia. So I would probably lean a little more towards him. Like I said, I don't really like to pick sides, though. I think you can have leaders across this doing multiple things. Even if you think about the Libyan revolution, you can't name a guy. You can name the guy who set up the council, Usama al-Jalali, but you can't name the commanders. There was no head commander, right? Like, they all ran certain pieces of it, and I think that's what it needs to be.
Well, they're going to be watching this. They're watching this show like they're on it.
But, well, you know, the terrorists watch it more. So.
Yeah, well, I found that out. They started tweeting about it, but on X.
Think about that.
Yeah, it's kind of, you know, unsettling. But, you know, there's another thing that you kind of brought up. Why is the why
really
did the
crazy
UN
times.
invite the Taliban to talk about climate
just
change?
With social media and X in general,
What
dude.
is that?
So the UN essentially wants to recognize the Taliban, right? But there's every time they try...
Like, X is so fucking wild. Like, if you really think about it at this point in time, like, however you think about shit politically and whether you like Elon Musk or not, and people probably know that watch me or hear me talk that I'm a bigger fan of X than in any other social platform. because of what it represents, which is at the end of the day, everyone does get a voice, including, like he said right there, the Taliban can tweet at him and talk shit. Like, that's fucking insane. Like, what the actual fuck? So it's also incredibly scary. So, and I've also talked about how I don't know how you necessarily quote unquote police X to make it less harmful with misinformation, because it is littered with it. It is oversaturated with this craziness at all the time. I don't know how you do that, but at the same time, I know that you don't do what it was before, and you just let what has been, basically established and put out there, that it was being used by a political party, the left side, basically to, quiet down the other side. That basically is what was happening with a lot of these accounts that was being shut down. Whether you agree with them or not, there is definitely, that's pretty fucking wild. So at the end of the day, I do enjoy what we have now currently with it, but I also am of the mindset of that there's still a better way ultimately, because there's still so much mud you have to dig through to get real information or the true information. Or that's why I said at the beginning of this, chill for just a second, just don't jump right. I'm bad for it as well. I'll probably do it 1,000 times more, slap on the wrist every fucking time. But, just chill for a second. Just like, let's see what Chris do it. If he's still in here, is actually really good about that, without just diving straight in. I'm good for just I'm in it. I'm fucking, all right, this is what's happening. And then, after the fact, something else has come out and I've now changed my opinion, So just kind of chill for a moment.
And show up and protest. And so they're now trying, like, it seems odd ways to do it. And they're like, let's bring him to the table on the climate, right? Because people agree on that. So it's just the UN's way to keep kind of opening the doors more and more to the Taliban, because the intent is to recognize that government. Like, the UN is not planning anything that I've seen to basically go after the Taliban. Remember, we talked about this previously, they gave up the restrictions on some of the Taliban senior leaders' travels.
You do a great
That's
job,
how Sirajuddin Haqqani got to go to the Hajj, right? The UN Security Council allowed that. So yeah, this is just another step in their process to recognize the Taliban.
So they don't. So this has nothing to do with climate change.
No, it
this
doesn't.
has everything to do with just.
Come on, you lived over there. They burn shit every day.
They burn tires to keep warm. I remember.
Oh shit, Miss Jessica.
Spitting in the sink in winter, and my spit was great.
I think I've got you on X.
So
just not at the edges of the climate change problem.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but the audience doesn't know that, and so that's why I want to bring that up. It has nothing to do with climate change. It's only
politics.
Yep. So let's move into
Miss Shorty. Lisa, what's up? We're having a wild one here tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move into that.
Yeah, I mean, since I was on the last time, the Western press finally broke he's alive. The interesting part is the U.S. still won't print it. The U.S. press won't. But what happened is, interestingly, British Intel leaked it to their press.
Really?
Yeah, and from what I'm hearing, they did it because they were upset that. So apparently, the CIA has been trying to curb the U.S. intelligence community and even trying to curb the Brits, saying Hamza's not alive, don't talk about Hamza, and basically the Brits are like, screw you, and they put it out in the press. The funny part is the U.S. press still didn't pick it up, so the U.S. press still went to the CIA, and CIA is like, don't print it. So it went, all over the world. It was all over in India, all over in Africa, and it didn't print here.
Hold on. Why does the CIA not want that out?
Because
think about that for a second, though. Like the CIA and even the FBI, like to have that kind of control, and to see the kind of control that the Biden administration ultimately had over media is fucking frightening, I think. But I think it's even deeper than just the Biden administration and the parties, because these deeper administrations within our government, CIA and the FBI and the NSA, that are deeply embedded within this at this point in time, dude, they have so much influence over everything. The Edward Snowden stuff, over a decade ago now, still in fucking Russia. When that stuff came out, and the world has never really been the same even since then, much less even, I think back the last 5 years now since COVID, nothing's been the same. But even thinking back to when that shit had broke off with Snowden and he really leaked it out, that they're always spying on us, and you have folks that, again, if you're hardcore political party one way or the other, excuse me, a lot of people, they go so hardcore on whatever plot point or whatever, whatever it is that they're going hardcore into this time, again, for whatever side. I don't know, man. I get fucked up with that shit because I can see stuff from both sides so often. I lost my train of thought there, but
don't believe Hamza Bin Laden's alive.
Excuse me?
I know.
How so?
He's like running Al-Qaeda. He's hosting meetings like every week.
Why do they really not believe that? Or
I think
is this just to cover their tracks?
I think they really don't believe it, but then they've put no effort in the last couple of years to be like, well, we should run it down and maybe reverse our assessment. And remember, the same thing happened after Benghazi, right? We knew Al-Qaeda was there in real time. And then they all went down.
I keep pausing. I get crazy to the Kennedy, right? John F. fucking Kennedy wanted to fucking dissemble the CIA, to demolish it. And look at what, you can go deep into conspiracy stuff on that side of it. But for the amount of power, that's where I was with the original thought there before I got kind of off on a tangent there. But dude, the CIA in general, which she was a part of, right?
That was some weird fake protest thing. But then CIA never changed their assessments when they knew Al-Qaeda was on the compound, right? So sometimes it's almost impossible to get the CIA to reverse an assessment.
So for those that don't know, Hamza Bin Laden he's basically the catalyst here. He is marrying into all these terrorist networks. We discussed this on your previous interview, but just to summarize it, he is kind of uniting them. The common goal is to come to the West, terrorize the West. How is this guy different than his father, Osama?
Yeah, Hamza's a problem. So...
Yeah.
It's really
I was
interesting.
going live a lot. That makes sense. That's cool.
First off, Hamza really believes in being kind of undercover and covert. Like, he doesn't want to really go out there and be on TV or even do, the audio recordings. Like, he wants to stay under the radar and hidden.
Oh,
he wants you to not even
I'm glad everyone's so interested
running
in this.
things.
Awesome.
So he wants a hidden hand in everything. So I told you, they're involved in October 7th. Al-Qaeda is never going to claim responsibility for it. Al-Qaeda is not going to claim responsibility for these embassy attacks, and they have a plan for that, I'll tell you. They're not going to claim responsibility for the Europe tax, and they're definitely not going to claim responsibility for the U.S. Homeland attack. Very different, right, than his father. The other thing is his father...
Hold on. Why are they not claiming responsibility?
Because they want to keep their safe havens intact, and they don't actually care if you know it was Al-Qaeda. They just want to take it to us, right?
Oh, shit.
It does not matter if it's ISIS, if it's HTS, if it's Hamas. They're all one, right? They're all an Islamic army. And nobody's taking this Islamic army concept seriously, but Hamza views all the terrorist groups in the world now under his Islamic army, and that's the way he views them. And he's almost like Iranian Quds Force, where he's like, okay, this is my proxy here, this is my proxy here, this is my proxy here. Like, he's planning an attack in Lebanon against some sort of U.S. interests, right? It's an Al-Qaeda Hezbollah plot. But when it occurs, only Hezbollah is going to take responsibility. You won't even know Al-Qaeda is involved in it. Just like Giuliani's Blitzkrieg. Al-Qaeda has supported that, right? They gave him 10,000 fighters, right? Taliban gave him camps in Afghanistan.
Dude,
Are you hearing
so many
anything about the
people.
Taliban and Al-Qaeda right now when they're talking about Syria?
No.
Zero. Did you hear their names come up at all for October 7th?
No.
Yeah. Hamza's killing it. So Hamza now wants to do completely covert action and let everything fall under this Islamic army. And the really interesting thing is his father was incredibly patient, right? Remember, everybody knows it took him 5 years to prove 9/11. And Osama bin Laden was like, hey, we can create the caliphate. I'm okay if it takes 1,000 years. Hamza wants to do everything in his lifetime. He wants the Islamic caliphate to be created in his lifetime. He wants to bring all of his father's goals, to fruition, and one of them was take it to America, right, on U.S.
That's one thing
soil.
I always think about, just Putin, for example, or any kind of crazy dude that has a lot of fucking power, and especially I think about Putin because of a nuke. But dude, once they start getting towards the end of their lifetimes, they're so fucking narcissistic and egotistical. That's all they're probably thinking about. They don't care about the next generation or who's next. They're like, I want to make sure it's me.
make them feel the war zones at home. And Hamza takes that very serious.
Dude,
and that's
people are
why
fucking
he has
scared.
gone
Brains are
full
scary,
force
bro.
on this plot. The interesting part is Hamza will approve a plot in one meeting, right? Bring it in, brief
that
it,
one.
brief this
Get it.
plan you have for the embassy. Yep, I'm good. So he moves a lot faster.
I
And
gotta get
actually,
a
of all
beer.
things, the
I can't pull away
IRGC and
from
Iran
this.
have complained, and they're even when they work with Al Qaeda, they're like, we want Saif al-Adil. He's more calm, cool, collected. Like, we trust him more. We don't think he's gonna.
Laura, I'm getting better at trying to like center myself when I get too deep into stuff like this, because it is very frightening and very scary, because it's actual horror movie shit in real life. But like, you know, I try my best to like, you know, because I do want to be informed. I want to know what's actually going on. Like, I want to try to understand it the best that I can, because everything's so fucking confusing and everybody's lying to you is what I keep finding. So, but yeah, at the end of the day, I try to like always center myself a little bit, you know, try to bring it back. Because if you get too lost into this stuff, dude, you'll become one of these fucking psycho people. Like one of these fucking people that just, you know what I'm saying? You know what the fuck I'm saying?
Cause a big ruckus, but they're like, Hamza's a loose cannon. He's running at full speed. We don't know how to control him. So it's almost an interesting thing. So it's funny, right? Other governments are seeing this, and our government won't even talk about him being alive, and he's running fast against us.
Can you go what are his goals? So hold on, I got a lot of questions. So if we have all these networks, we have all these terrorism networks. Is Hamza literally the number one guy?
So Hamza is the number one guy of what is now called the Islamic Army, okay?
Okay.
So the Islamic Army is Sunni Shia. It is his father's vision. Hamza's now put it to reality in the last 2 years, and it basically pulls in every group. It's Hamas, Hezbollah, ISIS, Taliban, Al Qaeda, whoever will agree to it. Obviously, there's a lot of negotiations going on to get people into this. This isn't easy, right? Like they're constantly giving up things to get people to join in. So he's been very successful. They've now trained about 120,000 people under this Islamic Army umbrella. So these new recruits are coming in. They're not basically training in an ISIS camp or an Al Qaeda camp. They are, but they're coming out of it as Islamic.
Oh shit, Lisa coming through. I'm going to take it just a second here. Almost went Let's Rock. Almost went straight Al Bundy. You know what? Sometimes I'll do it.
Let's rock.
Because I love Al Bundy. Lisa, thank you so much. Miss Shorty, get me a little bit deeper into this wheel that we're starting off here. Hell, fuck, yeah. Thank you so much. How many we got on here right now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, yeah, we're still a little bit early into this wheel. As soon as we can get a wheel filled up, we will be giving away some of these dank-ass stickers. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here tonight on this apocalyptic episode of Publicly Buzzed, but I would not want to be anywhere else but here with you guys. You guys know what's going on. I think we can handle this. We got this thing. Whoa, the outer church. That's a kitty priest coming through right there. Boom, Publicly Buzzed. Bada bing, bada boom. And then of course the classic murder church. Boom logo. Coming through. All three of those are on the line right now. And what is about to start happening, because I must admit through December, I was a little bit lazy with getting some of the stuff out. So yeah, we're about to start picking right back up. Christmas was overwhelming my brain, but we're back. Lisa, thank you so fucking much. Let me give you a little bit of love real quick. How about that? How about this one?
Let's get physical, physical. Baby, I got your money, don't you worry.
Thank you so much. I ain't even had time to go over here and look at anything. I've been so enthralled by this. Oh, I'm missing stuff too. Hold on. Shit. Damn. Hold on. Susan coming through. Susan Lupo, $25 and said, great stream. Susan, thank you so much for coming through here. We're going to take just a second. This has been a really good stream. It's just honestly been good to talk to everybody after such a traumatic event that unfolded yesterday on New Year's Day. $25 right there through the Cash App. That gets us halfway through a wheel, guys. Halfway there.
I'm sober enough to know what I'm doing, and I'm drunk enough to really enjoy doing it.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you very much. Susan has been with the Buzz Nation from early on, pretty damn early on, honestly. Susan, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for always coming through, and Gypsy thanks you as well. Gamby's coming through here as well with a $4.99. Throw me on that son of a bitch, and you're getting on there right now, Gamby's. Thank you very much. And I just learned something about Gamby's. Gamby's, in real life, skydives.
I'm telling you like it is, baby.
That's insane. If I went skydiving, I would not make it back. I would be dead.
Hold up.
I'm telling you right now, Gambies, thank you so much. Appreciate that. That gets us just a little bit deeper right now into this will. And we're going to keep on rolling. I'm going to go get a brewski. Again, everybody, thank you all so much for hanging and banging here tonight. And yeah, keep on rolling.
Army. So when they're doing deployments to Syria, to Somalia, to Mali, these fighters are viewing themselves as Islamic Army. And the point of that is, if they get detained, they're not going to say Al Qaeda, right? So Hamza set this up. And then he took one of his father's old bodyguards, Hamza al-Ghamdi, his name is, and put him in charge. So Hamza al-Ghamdi is actually basically the commander of the Islamic Army. Maybe like a month ago, FBI upped his reward. So this is funny. So Hamza al-Ghamdi is worth $5 million. Hamza Bin Laden, who's in charge of Hamza al-Ghamdi and appointed him, he's on the wanted list for $1 million. So we don't even have our priorities right of who's in charge, who the enemy is, what they're involved in. So yeah, so there's the whole Islamic Army piece, okay? Now under the Islamic Army falls the original goals of Osama bin Laden, right? One is to push the U.S. out of the Middle East. That's the wave of attacks that had the Israel attack, right? It's going to be the wave of attacks or the embassy attacks, right? Because it's to push us out of embassies in the Middle East, like they're targeting U.S. Embassy Baghdad, for example, right? Makes perfect sense. And then there is the restoration of the caliphate. So the Syria push is a restoration of the caliphate. The Mali push is the restoration of the caliphate. So he's just doing his father's old goals, but faster, and he's using all the other terrorist groups to make it happen. It's not going to be Al-Qaeda breaching these goals. It's going to be Al-Qaeda, ISIS, whomever. And the way that they're dealing with it is when they're sitting down making these agreements. So when they sat down and talked about Syria and Iraq, okay? Al-Qaeda now has given up the thought of, I want to own territory. Al-Qaeda's thought, I want to be the governments, right? Or I want my allies to be the government. So they more want a political power. So they sat down with ISIS and says, ISIS, if you want to run certain parts of Syria, you want to run certain parts of Iraq, and they've had the same discussion with IRGC, like, we're fine with that. Like, let's come to agreement on what that looks like. So, so there's some really interesting partnerships going on when you'd say, oh no, they're against each other. It's like, no, they're finding ways to compromise because they all want the same things in a different way.
You had mentioned they have a couple of different goals. Well, a handful of goals. You mentioned Europe. You mentioned Israel, I believe. You mentioned the U.S. Where are all the targets?
Sure.
And what are the goals?
So,
let's leave the U.S. for last.
We're back.
Sure. So if you talk about Israel, obviously there was the big Hamas attack, and then they actually have a couple other waves of attacks. I know one of them, and I shared it. I'll probably get yelled at for sharing that one too.
Couple pets.
And then they want to do what they against Israel, what they do with us, like attack the embassies. Okay, so that's the Israel piece. And then they want to do attacks on Europe. But the interesting part is, even their Europe attacks, they're still leaning towards, hey, when we go attack Norway or whomever. We want to attack the U.
I've often said it, and I'll say it again. Gamby is a bad. I used to say Gamby is a bad bitch before I even knew she was a bad bitch. But I already knew. I already felt that energy from
U.S.
you.
embassy there. So
Let that
we're
be known.
still almost the target, even though they're going to do. They want to do the attack in that country. And then the last piece is they want this October 7th style attack in multiple places in Europe. And then
This
in
shit's
the
scary,
U.S. And
bro.
that's the one that Scott talked to you about, that we had, in the AQ 2.0 book. But I realized he didn't give it to you when he was here. So I'm giving you the AQ 2.0 book. But
So just to come back just for a second to what's happening right now, and I'm gonna reference the Las Vegas explosion as well in the Cybertruck in front of the Trump Hotel. I want to know what her opinion is. I've seen a lot of different opinions, and it doesn't seem like that they're actually connected. But on a deeper level, it makes me wonder, and whether a lot of people or somebody may be called a conspiracy theorist, or something to that fashion, for going down maybe some different avenues to try to figure out maybe some connections with these two individuals that did these two events. But I would like to maybe see somebody in her perspective, or somebody in her position from her perspective on the matter, quite frankly. But but as of currently, just being honest, it looks like that they aren't connected, which is crazy, because as soon as that happened, you have wake up that morning and you see what's unfolded in New Orleans, and then that morning while you're reading it in the real time, I'm pretty sure that's what happened with me. I was even just like, reading. It's just endless. It's endless. You can just scroll it for days. That's the one bad thing about X. And I wouldn't. If I get it. If you're not trying to dig deeper or see that over and over and over, because it can be a lot. But all of a sudden, you see that this event has also now occurred in Las Vegas, and you're like, whoa. Immediately I was like, well, this is fucking crazy. Like, something's going on.
But that's really interesting. So we gave
You worked on this.
I gave a little bit of our investigation to it. So this was put together by a European retired intelligence officer. And what he did is he reached out to his huge community from working his entire career and said, what do you have on this? What do you have on this? What do you have on this? And he compiled a bunch of people's investigations into this attack. So this is the best thing you can get, open source.
Al-Qaeda 2.0, the upcoming attack on the United States and Europe unveiled.
So Boone and I focus on the U.S. homeland piece of this attack, but people who contributed to the book focus on the Europe piece, right? Because they're European.
Interesting. Could you get me connected?
Yeah, I'll put you in touch.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, since we're giving gifts, I was going to wait till later, but I got you a gift too, Sarah.
Whoa.
You heard about the
Of
unplugged
course, yeah, I
phone?
use the app, so I'm kind of excited I can
Is this
upgrade to
another
the phone.
fucking-
There
It's
you
a
go.
fucking-
So, yeah, developed by...
Yeah.
But, yeah, so
was definitely
where's
a commercial.
Hamza Bin Laden been all these
Very
years?
well done commercial. You can't
So
fool me.
We
You can't
basically
fool me!
found out where he was in 2022, and that's when he was
Pop
in
another
Kandahar,
one.
right?
Hang out for a little bit
We
longer,
learned
my
that
friends.
Prior to that, he was in Waziristan, Pakistan, but really the chunk of the time he was in Iran. The thing is, when Qasem Soleimani was killed in early 2020, he was like, I'm not sure Iran can keep me safe if they couldn't keep Soleimani safe. And so he left Iran at that time and went to Pakistan. And so then he stayed in Pakistan until Kabul fell. And then he went into Afghanistan.
In that report that you had mentioned that the British intelligence leaked to the press, where is that? Can we find that and overlay it right now?
Well, yeah, it's basically, it then was turned into an article. So it just says he's now the head of Al-Qaeda. He's planning operations against the West, these large-scale attacks. So, yeah, I think it first was in, like, the Mirror or the Sun, but then a ton of news articles picked up the same thing.
So it's out there.
Yeah, it's out there.
All over UK media.
Yeah, if you just put Hamza Bin Laden live, it'll come up.
What about his brother, Abdullah? Why is that? What is his role?
Yeah, so
Saw something
the
about
interesting
that.
part is Abdullah was the one in...
Dude, yeah, the Cybertruck guy was active. Dude, he had just left Germany from duty, had an approved leave, came here and did that shit, and now they're saying offed himself in the Cybertruck before it happened. I mean, there's a lot of questions around that one. That one's fucking weird, dude.
Originally in all the meetings, right? And so Abdullah's the one everybody hears about. They're like, yeah, Bin Laden has an alive son, Abdullah, and then they discount Hamza because Hamza's very covert, under the radar. Abdullah is interesting because a lot of people don't understand this. So, before the fall of Kabul, when there was the fighting with the Afghan National Army, it was Abdullah bin Laden and a terrorist named Abu Ikhlas al-Mazri who were running the fronts of that war. So Al-Qaeda was running the war against our allies when Afghanistan fell. That wasn't a Taliban-led war. That was an Al-Qaeda-led war. And so Abdullah's become an amazing strategist, and a lot of people think he's kind of just this businessman or CEO type. And so now he's pretty much running the operations of Al-Qaeda, and he runs all the terrorist camps. So he is basically the terrorists who train the homeland attackers, and that's why he really matters.
Whoa.
And he knows
It's all coming together. Shit like that adds up, though, right?
Wow.
Like,
You know, I find it really interesting that
That's a
they
good
don't
point,
even
man.
care about the credit anymore because if I remember correctly, when I was working over there, that's all they wanted to do was easiest and biggest target of opportunity so that it hits the press, they can take credit for it, and everybody's scared shitless of them. Now they don't even care about that.
Yeah, they just want to hurt us, right? And the interesting part is, we've spent a lot of time trying to find all the training camps for the Homeland attacks, right? And we've really come up
yes, these are just in her brain. Like,
with three. We're confident, right?
Incredible.
We've taken advanced urban warfare that we've talked about, suicide bombing training, and then cover and covert training, right? Al-Qaeda's teaching them, like, don't even say you've been to Afghanistan, like if you're Kuwaiti or Saudi, never mention the word Al-Qaeda, right? When they go through these camps together, they're all given fake names. So if we're in camp together, I don't know your name as Shawn Ryan, I know you as Joe Bob, right? So the really interesting thing is that matters to them. They don't want the track
They're using
record
pseudonyms even within
in
now.
camps. Yep, amongst each other. They don't even trust each other to give the true name.
Holy shit. So they've really fucking stepped it up.
Yeah. And then there's a whole nother piece that it's so hard to get people to comprehend that this now is going to sound like a conspiracy theory. Okay. Now, Al-Qaeda, and it's been Hamza Bin Laden. Hamza Bin Laden went to Sana'a Ullah Ghaffari, who's the head of ISIS Khorasan province, and said, hey, we don't want to just claim our attacks in the US and Europe on ISKP. We need ISKP bodies, right? We need terrorists at that attack. So when they're dead and you ID them back, you say, yes, they're ISIS Khorasan province. So Hamza Bin Laden and Sana'a Ullah Ghaffari made a deal, and there would be ISIS fighters in Al-Qaeda's homeland attack. It's really interesting. And then ISIS will claim responsibility for the attack. And they went so far as Taliban has been feeding bits and info to the U.S. government. So after the attack, the U.S. government will go back into its intelligence databases for the last couple years and be like, yeah, we had a little piece on this attacker, he's ISIS. We've had a little piece on that attacker, he's ISIS. We've had a piece on that attacker, it's ISIS. It's an ISIS attack. So U.S. intel is going to back it because they've been feeding the information in. That's how well they've planned this.
Holy shit. All right. Sarah, you're just...
they're deep.
my mind's
bro,
going to
like-
explode. I'm going to take a quick break here. We'll come back and get into the rest
Dude,
of
it's
this.
generations of fucking terrorists that are now smart enough to realize
to our overall health and wellness.
that they've got to work with some of the other terrorists. This guy's making loot, dude. He's got some crazy ads.
I forgot to bring up Al-Qaeda and who I thought were enemies, but sounds like, according to you...
So yeah, these folks are so fucking smart now. These terrorists from different groups, the leaders are so fucking smart now that they realize ultimately at the end of the day they have to get rid of the biggest evil, which is fucking us, Europe.
Well, Hamza lived there safely, right? So it says something.
What's going on there?
Well, the interesting thing is, when we went into Afghanistan, we weren't really fighting the senior leaders of Al-Qaeda, right? They all fled within those first few months, right?
Thanks
Bin
everyone for
Laden
hanging
went
out
across
today.
Tora Bora,
Hit that
et
old
cetera.
like ski.
So the Al-Qaeda terrorists went to two countries. They went
Hold on, before we get any deeper, hold on. Low light recovery coming through with a $10 holler in the super chat. You folks are smoking weed and I got the munchies. How'd that happen? Whoa! That's a contact high, right? That's an internet virtual contact high.
Hold up! Hold up! Hold up!
What?
Just chilling.
What are we doing?
Just chilling.
Just hanging out. Just chilling. You know what I'm saying?
Shit. Here we go again.
Doing
Are
it.
you crazy? Are you out of your mind?
Dude, thanks everyone for hanging out. I really appreciate it. If you haven't hit the like, if you're coming through randomly and you haven't seen the X post and you're on X, share that son of a bitch out. All that helps us out here. We're getting a little bit deeper here. I didn't know if I'd finish this tonight, but maybe we will. I don't know. This is incredibly fucking interesting
Went to
and
Pakistan, and I
horrifying.
went to Iran. Well, in Pakistan, the Pakistani
Light recovery. Let me get you on this list
teamed up
for a
with
will.
us, and they got paid lots of money, and they started capturing terrorists, right? Like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, for example. So the terrorists then are like, well, we're probably going to be safer in Iran, but now if you're in Iran, your wives are there, your children are there, you're going to make a very close relationship with the government, as you can imagine. And so Al-Qaeda made a close relationship with Qasem Soleimani, who is now deceased, but he headed the Iranian Quds Force. And
So to this point, here's something that's definitely something that comes across my brain, honestly. Hold on. And it makes sense. Christo, it would be hard to pull off having 1,000 sleeper cells waiting here to attack and not one of them get on the radar. Not one of them gets on the radar. Also, it's expensive to fund their stay here, wait for the attack. That's a good point, because we have all of these, migrants, and we have all these immigrants that flood in that are, get protected, and they're staying in places like New York City, and we see all this crazy shit that's happening. That's a good point also. Like, pop it back up here again. That's a lot of fucking people. It's a lot of people that are talking about the dude that's from Texas that went into New Orleans as a sleeper cell. This dude was an American dude that was in the fucking military here within the United States. The initial reports right out the gate, what were we seeing? He slipped through the border. That wasn't even true. Like, that's not even true. And the guy in Vegas, just a fucking actual guy in service. So we do see a lot of horrific stuff from a lot of people that have slipped through, absolutely. But yeah, dude, like, it would be wild and probably next to improbable and impossible to see them all at one point in time wake up, quote unquote, from being the sleeper cell and do all this damage or unleash all of this hell or whatever, man. I don't know. That's a lot of the scares, though. I mean, you see a lot of that fear mongering online.
Qasem Soleimani basically asked one of his really good friends, another member of the military, Mohammed Kazemi, his name was, and he said, hey, your job is to keep Hamza Bin Laden safe, Saif al-Adil safe, and he actually was also protecting one of our Benghazi plotters. That's why we know this so well. So it was his job to keep them safe. So when Qasmani died, this individual moved up. He's not the head of the Quds Force. He's the head of the IRGC's intelligence organization. So basically, the people that the man who harbored Al-Qaeda is one of the most senior intelligence officials in all of Iran. So that's the relationship. And he comes all the time to Afghanistan. He plotted the Hamas attacks with Al-Qaeda, the Taliban.
Bring out opinion.
And
that's what I want.
obviously Hamas, and then internal units within Iran to include Khomeini. Like, Khomeini was involved in the Hamas attack planning, and even Hibatullah Akhundzada, who we talked about, the head of the Taliban, he issued the fatwa for the attack, and then it was an IRGC general that did the go for the attack, right? Like, that's how intermingled all these people have become. And we still have analysts that say, oh, Iran doesn't get along with Al-Qaeda, or Iran's attacking Al-Qaeda. It's like, what are you talking about? They harbored them almost the entire war we had.
So these guys are super in cahoots.
Yeah, they're very, very close relations.
Are they sharing intelligence?
100%. To where the Taliban and Al-Qaeda gave the Iranian government intelligence base. It's basically in an Al-Qaeda camp in Kandahar.
Are you?
Yep.
Are you? So they're commingled now.
Yeah. And remember, this isn't just Iran. So North Koreans come to Kandahar, the Russians come to Kandahar, the Chinese come to Kandahar, and they don't just meet with the Taliban, they meet with each other.
Well, wait a minute. How can the Russians be involved? Because there was that big mall attack from ISIS, which, if all these networks are connected, then...
Right. The thing is, just like us, Russia had to go to the Taliban to collect on ISIS and to go against ISIS, just like we do. So there's two branches of ISIS. Nobody actually really understands this. ISIS Khorasan province, okay? There's the one we all know that's run by Sanaullah Ghaffari, and he did the Abbey Gate attacks with the Haqqani network, okay? Mm-hmm. There's a whole nother branch that's based in northern Afghanistan, is run by an individual named Gulmurad Kalimov. He is basically one of the main enemies in the world of Russia. He used to run the Tajikistan Special Forces. He defected to ISIS. He became ISIS's Minister of War. Then he got detained. His death got faked. He somehow got released after the fall of Kabul. And he runs this unit now in northern Afghanistan. And the interesting part is, so the one that's run by Sanaullah Ghaffari, okay, that one basically emanated out of a lot of Pakistanis, a lot of guys from Iraq's agency and the Fatah, some Punjabis, etc. It was always run by a Pakistani until the last leader got captured, Amjad Faruqi, and then Sanaullah took over. So Sanaullah is the first Afghan to run it. But when Sanaullah took over, he'd been a member of the Haqqani network since 2012, and he was the head of the Haqqani network in Kabul, okay? So this branch now is controlled by Sirajuddin Haqqani, right? And they're the ones that jointly did Abbey Gate. The other branch with Kalamov, Sirajuddin Haqqani is giving him refuge in northern Afghanistan. So Sirajuddin Haqqani is funding and supporting the second branch. So the crazy part is the Haqqani branch essentially runs the two arms. Now it's the northern arm that's getting a lot of those Central Asian terrorists. So even though Sanaullah did the Moscow attacks, the threat from Russia comes from Kalamov. And the Taliban are hiding the Kalamov angle completely from Russia, making them focus on the other one.
Wow.
It's a whole ruse.
Wow. Man, these guys have really stepped it up. Let's move into some of your investigations. I saw you completed 2 more Know Thy Enemy investigations. Let's dive into those.
Yep. So we completed basically October 7th, Know Thy Enemy, right? That's our most recent one. And that was the one that went into the Hamas attacks. And then before that, we completed basically our own Abbey and Gate investigation. We weren't going to do either of these. And then in April, CENTCOM put out their investigation to Abbey Gate. So what was that, 3.5 years of doing an investigation? And there is a line in their report. Our investigation identified the suicide bomber as, and it said, Abdul Rahman al-Lagori. That's a kunya or an alias. And I was like, they've investigated this for 3.5 years and they don't know his true name. And that's when so I realized I wanted to do this in April, and I got his true name by the time I released in August, and they couldn't get his true name, a full government body. They had 12 investigators on this panel in 3.5 years. That's how little they investigated Abbey Gate. They also, of course, as you know, covered up the Haqqani network was involved in it.
So is this all just a show, their investigations? What
Yes. Remember, I worked in Congress.
What the fuck do they actually do?
All the government investigations are just...
When you see some of these heads of these organizations talk in front of fucking Congress, it's so infuriating because they don't give a shit. They just pass everything off. Every single question is just if they don't want to answer something, they won't. They have some kind of fucking line or phrase to pass it off with. That's so fucking infuriating when you know that stuff is happening.
Checking a box, we did something. But if you actually know how
something
to
has to be done to stop
that
stuff.
You can find all these holes, right? They did not do their job properly.
I don't know. It feels like more and more people are getting interested in waking up to this stuff. But maybe it's because
Sangari.
of
so
the
they
age
couldn't even
group
find
on it,
the
right?
true
Maybe
name
as I get
of
older,
a man who blew up 13 of our service members. That's how little they cared. And that's what I find offensive.
But it is more mainstream in a weird way. I don't know.
What else do we need to know?
For the Abbey Gate investigation, it's really interesting. So our government did 2 things that are very dishonest to the public. One is they made us think this was a lone wolf ISIS bomber, right? It wasn't. This was a planned attack with the senior leadership of ISIS Khorasan province and the senior leadership of the Haqqanis. In a report, we talked through basically 12 terrorists involved. 7 of them are Haqqanis.
I'll show you that Chris on here tonight. I honestly thought about asking him, but I got him coming on tomorrow.
They can plan an attack, okay?
They want to annoy him.
The terrorist, we found out the exact date he got released from Bagram. He gets released. So we call the NEO. We say, hey, we're going to do a NEO.
What's up, brother?
August 13th, okay? The U.S. government says, we're going to finally do a NEO. They waited that long. 2 days later, August 15th, the suicide bomber, even though they don't know his real name, gets released from Bagram, okay? 3 days later, he's in Kandahar sitting in the operational meeting to plan this attack. Then, the 21st of August, the Haqqanis choose 3 senior commanders who are going to man the gates and let the bomber through the gates, okay? 2 days later, they basically shift a bunch of security from North Gate to Abbey Gate because they want more bodies at Abbey Gate when they blow it up. And then 2 days later after that, U.S. puts out the threat, there's a suicide bomber threat, and then the next day they blow it. That's how quickly they basically find out we're doing a NEO on the 13th. The bomber gets on the 15th, and they have them at the table on the 18th planning this. They killed over 170 Afghans and 13 of our service members.
Holy.
And the U.S. government made you believe this was a lone wolf.
Did they do that on purpose?
Like,
I mean,
we're in this
Was it
age where so much real shit is coming out at all times,
go
dude.
find out.
Like,
where the
they can't
planning
stop
meeting
it,
took
and,
place.
like, I don't know.
who moved the suicide bomber.
I don't know.
who
I could
moved
get into some
Salud
deeper
Ghaffari
conspiracy
to
stuff
Kabul.
that I can't
know
believe, so
who
I'm
the
not.
3 men were at the gates. And I know
Calm
the
down. Let's
terrorist,
chill
his name
out.
is Hafiz Haqqani, who told the bomber, okay, you're in a good spot now, blow. I know all that on my own, collecting on my own. How can the U.S. government not collect that? And if they aren't collecting it, we got a lot more to worry about.
I hope some of these new administration picks get in contact with you. I really do, because you
Yes.
are super sharp.
Get
What is
this lady
the-
in there.
What's the involvement? What is the connection between the October 7th Hamas
You know,
attacks
hopefully this
and
is going viral
Afghanistan?
now. That's how I seen it because of all the shit that's happening. So, and that's what made me want to do this show. So hopefully there's some other folks that are seeing this.
Yeah, so the interesting part is, right? So this was the other investigation we weren't going to do, okay? So we put out Abbey Gate because CENTCOM, I thought, did something very embarrassing. And then what we knew the plotting had happened in Afghanistan. But we thought, okay, Israel is just going to keep calling it the Hamas attacks until they wipe out Hamas, right? That makes sense. You can't fight 3 or 4 different fronts, right? Or different terrorist groups at the same time. Well, we're getting closer to coming up on the year mark of it, and Israel still wasn't telling anyone, you know, obviously they knew IRGC was involved because they took out a bunch of them, but they weren't telling anybody about Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, and they weren't striking Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, but we knew Israel is in a series of attacks, right? And those series of attacks include the U.S. homeland. So we're like, if we don't put out the truth that Al-Qaeda did October 7th, then how do we expect the law enforcement and first responders in the U.S. to be prepared if no one told them October 7th was the same people who are going to attack in the U.S., right? Because if you can look at those tactics, prepare, do different training, it puts you in a more resilient position if an attack happens in your community. So that was the catalyst that made us put out October 7th. So basically what happened is this was a joint kind of Al-Qaeda, IRGC thing, and I said this is a whole bigger thing, and they did all this over Telegram for the most part. So they had an original planning meeting in Kandahar again, and then they had kind of like their second meeting up in Kabul, and then most of the rest of the plotting occurred via Telegram. And then, which is crazy, right? You'd think our governments could collect that in advance. We learned a lot of things during this process. First off, in the first plotting meeting, it was Saif al-Adil. He runs the military commission of the Taliban. He's the one that
Saif
chose
al-Adil.
the date. Do you know
I
what's
could read that every
significant
day of the
about
week.
October 7th?
No.
So he
Saif
first chose
al-Adil.
October 7th, 2022. I told you it got pushed a year because of Zawahiri, which is also its own point, right? We struck an Al-Qaeda member, and it forced them to push the
That's
attack
awesome,
another
Johnny.
year. What if we kept striking them in Afghanistan during that time, right? It could have pushed the attacks longer, and this
Johnny
is why
knows.
I say
Jer-
we need
Johnny's
to
a
strike
very informed
the command
dude.
and control of the
Always
homeland
dropping
attack,
knowledge in
right?
the
But
Discord.
anyway, set aside, October 7th was the day George Bush announced Operation Enduring Freedom, and we basically started carpet bombing Kandahar.
No shit.
So nobody understands the October 7th attacks actually have a connection to Afghanistan to begin with, and the date was chosen to do with Afghanistan. So everybody who's like, why do we care about Israel? Why is that our problem? It's like, that's just the first in a series. It's coming for us. That's like the test run.
Did you put that together?
Yes. Well, my team, my Know Thy Enemy investigation team.
How has nobody else put that together?
Well, I don't think we're the only ones. So we received kind of a pat on the back from a foreign government that reached out to someone that knows me, like they realized we know each other through social media, and they told that person to tell me, your report is spot on, that's what we have. So that's a foreign government's intelligence service saying, good job, like bravo.
Who was it? Can you mention that?
It was a European one.
Okay.
So to say nobody has that, I think is untrue. I hope our government has it, right? But the dishonesty behind it would be a problem if they did, and they're not preparing America for this October 7th round of attacks that are coming here.
You're mentioning law enforcement being proactive, and I don't see that happening no matter what.
Right, but at least if so, you know how budgets work and training works and everything else. At least if you say a threat's coming and the government puts out something, it gives you a catalyst or it gives you something to hold on to, right? And you can go and say, we need more training. We haven't even done this type of training in 6 years. Like, you can start having the discussions. But if nobody's sharing anything, and I don't know if you saw, but Scott Mann and I went and met with Governor DeSantis and briefed this to him, and he said, I've received no threat reporting at all on terrorism from the federal government. So they're not passing anything down to these levels. So anyone who's like, yeah, this is all happening behind the scenes, don't worry, everyone's prepared.
Talk to the governor of West Virginia.
Most
Are you
of the
getting
country have
anything
never heard Al-Qaeda's planning
in relation to terrorism?
Well, actually, I'll redact what I just mentioned. It sounded like DeSantis actually took it very seriously.
He did.
And didn't he develop some sort of a task force?
So he did multiple things. He, the next day, briefed the sheriffs, every sheriff in the state of Florida, and told them there's a potential threat, which matters, right? And then, he created like basically a kind of an information sharing so we can get in touch with his people immediately if we found some threat info or just something useful that he could get the state involved in or to train behind. So he's been proactive.
This is a very smart lady.
How can I get ahead of this?
It should be utilized.
Or how can I use people like you, right? Like your community. Florida's full of retired special ops guys who fought these guys for 20 years overseas, right? And he understands that, and he's like, how do I harness that?
Well, that's what I was getting at. So he did stand up. Eddie Gallagher was telling me about it. I think Scott told me about it.
Well, there's a little bit, so that's slightly
hope you feel better,
different,
Cat Girl.
but he'll be able to utilize that. So he basically has this thing called the
A lot of people
Florida
have been
National
sick.
Guard.
Cassie's
And
been
the Florida
sick for a while
National
now,
Guard is
for
like
a week. Something's been going around.
And could have the capabilities of a counterterrorism force. It's being trained properly that way. It has different type of legal authorities. So he has positioned the state of Florida to basically have a force that is a force multiplier against counterterrorism, and this doesn't really exist in other states. So he, though, was on that train even before the Al-Qaeda threat. He just got ahead of it, right? So he was already preparing something like this, and he now has a force with the capabilities that at least can respond along with law enforcement, basically. So you'll have more trained bodies to deal with this faster in an emergency.
So I wonder if there's a way to get, I'm obviously very concerned about Tennessee. I wonder if there's a way to get DeSantis to have a chat with Bill Lee, the governor of Tennessee, to start standing something up like that, because I thought that was genius. In fact, I'm going to have my social media team cut a clip of that and try to target Bill Lee to get his attention about that, because there's also a ton of special operations guys, retired guys like me that are out now that live in Tennessee, and that would be... why would you not do that at this point, especially with the way the federal government is, the border wide
we
open?
can talk about how like shitty things are and like how bad stuff can be, but like at the same time, we're living in like such an awesome age of information, or whatever you want to call it, that like we can get shows like this, right? Like one of the bad things is that there's so many voices now, right? That there's also all of the bad stuff that people can be implemented with. But man, when you can see stuff that's interesting like this, or shows like this, like... there are still real people outside of what you're seeing on television, which is mostly, almost always, if it's the news, it's probably bullshit. Like, it's still an entertainment show that's trying to keep you as a viewer, where, not that this isn't, but this is still, you're seeing their credentials, and you can hear that they care about the country. Like,
It's coming to save you.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it's true.
Scott's book.
And you
No
really
one's
should
coming to
have someone
save you.
come on, because my summary of the Florida National Guard was probably horrible, and they're probably going to sit and watch us and like, she doesn't even know what we do, right? We do way more than that. So you should have someone come on and actually talk about it, because I think it would be interesting for people to see, hey, there are other models out there. People are being creative and innovative on this. States need to take a look at this.
Yeah, the federal government, I mean, hopefully that changes come January 20th, but right now it's not functioning. States better start getting involved. You mentioned something about the IRGC targeting. What is the IRGC to start with?
Basically, it's another branch of the Iranian military, but it would be more like JSOC than like the
Okay.
U.S. Army, if that makes sense.
So
'Cause
it's
they
their tier
have like
one
a
units.
U.S. Army.
Okay.
And then there's different pieces of it. So the most famous one is the Quds Force, and that was one run by Qasem Soleimani. And the Quds Force, it was almost like special ops, CIA, and lethal operations, like all in one.
Okay. And so are they targeting Trump?
So Trump is the one they blame for the death of Qasem Soleimani, because he set up the team. He got the approvals. Because remember, Qasem Soleimani was potentially like, he was a Iranian military general. So the U.S. government
Carrie?
wouldn't put him
Get
on a
in
hit
here.
list, because they're like, that's an official in another government. It wasn't until Trump came in and put lethal authorities that the U.S. could go after him. Iran knows this, so they blame his death in Iraq on Trump almost solely. So they've been planning an operation. I call it the Soleimani plot, but the U.S. government probably calls it something different. And we came across the Soleimani plot while doing our October 7th investigation, because the terrorist I told you about, Mohammad Kazemi, he's masterminding it. So it's so crazy. So he was one of the key plotters of October 7th. He's masterminding, basically assassinating President Trump. The U.S. government doesn't have him on the FBI most wanted list.
Probably because they want him dead.
But isn't that crazy? He's like the mastermind behind a plot. Even if Trump wasn't going to be the president again, he was the mastermind of a plot against a former U.S. president. He's not even on our wanted list. This is the problem with our counterterrorism, has just gone off the rails, right?
Why? Why is it DEI? What is it? What's going on?
I pray they knew he was the mastermind, but there's a potential, like we were the only ones that found the suicide bomber's true name. There's a potential we got lucky and we found the mastermind before the U.S. government. But even once we put it out, nobody in the U.S. government has contacted us to even ask about it. And the crazy part is, we put this at the end of our report, the money going into the Soleimani plot is phenomenal. It's $145 million a month. So that doesn't just assassinate a president. So we don't know what the plot is. The U.S. government's the one that says it's a plot against Trump. There is a ton of money behind that plot. So I don't know if it's bigger than Trump. I don't know if it's Trump and some other symbols. Because remember, so what Iran usually does, and this is a correct assessment by the U.S. government, when they target someone or something, it's always equal. So like if you hit their embassy, they would hit back your embassy. If you killed a scientist, they would do an assassination, right? So the U.S. government is like, okay, we killed Qasem Soleimani. So Iran is going to counter by doing an assassination. But Qasem Soleimani isn't just a man in Iran. To Iran, he was the symbol of the Iranian revolution. Think about that. So he's like, I don't know, our capital or our Statue of Liberty. He's bigger than a man, right? So I do think U.S. might be underestimating how the Iranians view Qasem Soleimani. And I think that the response to him is going to be bigger than that they're assassinating. I don't think it's just going to be the assassination of one man.
Who do you think? Who else do you think might be on that list?
I mean, with that kind of money, like, I wonder if it's the Capitol.
The entire Capitol. Holy shit.
Well, the building, you know.
Wow.
The fuck?
Let's move into the homeland.
Jesus.
Why? We'll move into the homeland, then I was going to save that to the end, but it's getting hard to concentrate because that's all I could think about. I think about this stuff all the time. What's coming? I mean, when I talk to Scott, and I can't remember.
Dude, it's been
sometimes I
fucking
get my
awesome, Johnny.
conversations blurred because it's.
I was a little bit worried, but also I was like, I'm so
Scott,
intrigued by all this and interested.
If I remember correctly, Scott told me that Al Qaeda is basically predicting that the casualty count will be between 50 and 60,000 Americans dead. Am I wrong on that?
So I don't know the count that they're predicting. What I do know is Al Qaeda trained and sent 1,000 attackers.
1,000 attackers. When did they come through?
So they finished training and they deployed them. Now, depending on how they come through, it could take different times, right? So the fastest I've seen an Afghan leave Afghanistan and get over the border illegally is about 3 weeks. Now, if you get a tourist visa and a Saudi's passport, he can fly the day after he gets his visa, right? So it depends, because they are fine getting people in however they can get them in, and they actually prefer legal immigration, as you can imagine, because they want basically the attackers to sit here and wait. If they're legal, they're not going to raise any alarm bells.
So wait a minute. I just want to clarify. You are 100% certain that there are 1,000 plus Al-Qaeda trained fighters within the United States borders?
Well, Al-Qaeda says they trained and deployed 1,000 for this attack. First off, I think there's more than 1,000 Al-Qaeda members in the United States.
So
but
this
for
is
the
the scary
Homeland
shit
attack,
that she's
that number is
predicting.
based on what Al-Qaeda is saying, so they could exaggerate it. However, they did have about 1,400 in the Hamas attack, so the number is not off from what they did in
Bill
the first
again,
round
I'm
of
glad you're
attacks.
here.
Is there any indication?
Well,
of what
Bill
kind of
again,
attacks there's gonna
it's
be? Actually,
normally not this serious, actually, so welcome in.
Let me, before we get into that, how old is this information?
I mean, it's ongoing. So the training's already done, right? So all the training info is now old because they trained all the Homeland attackers, if that makes sense. So like next week, you're not going to get info of a Homeland attacker probably at a terrorist camp because it's already done. So all this has been in the last year.
So it's been over a year. It's been a year.
Because this was a continuation, so they planned October 7th first, and then they rolled into planning this after.
Are we next, or is Europe next?
I think the embassy attacks are next, in my opinion.
What are they waiting for the embassies?
I don't think they're waiting. I think it took time to train them. They've now approved them, and they've now moved into the operational stage.
What about the U.S.?
So the U.S., from what we've seen, I told you about the camps, right? That there's the advanced urban warfare. So we think it's going to look like October 7th, but it's actually based on, and October 7th was probably also based on it. It's based on the Mumbai attacks that occurred 15 years ago in Delhi, India. And we believe this for multiple reasons.
What happened there? Before we dig into that.
Yeah, we talked about this. I think it was my first episode. It was basically a terrorist group, Lashkar-e-Taiba. They did a number. It's called swarming attacks. They did a number of attacks into Delhi, at a hotel, the Taj Mahal, I believe it was called, at like basically the train station, etc. The interesting thing about it, and this is why they're going to employ it now, is those terrorists were given kind of like latitude. One, they could change the location they were attacking, and they could change the modus operandi they were using. So for example, when they went in the train station, it was supposed to be a bombing. When they got in there, they said, wow, we can kill more people just shooting them than putting the bomb together, and they shot them. Another thing that they did is in real time, information was being passed to them. So when they were in the Taj Mahal, they were being told what was on the press and what the police were doing, and they changed basically some of their movements in the hotel to make the attack last longer, okay? So this is the part that's going to be different, right? So Al-Qaeda always wants to innovate when it does its next attack, right? So I've already told you about the innovation of the suicide vests. Well, do you know we really haven't had a suicide bombing in the United States ever? There's the Nashville guy who did the strange, blew himself up in the car early in the morning when no one was around. That's kind of it.
The AT&T building?
Yep. So
The new
we have
dude,
not had a man.
the dude in New Orleans, from the pictures, it looked like he had something around his neck and on his body, but, you know, we know that he had the IEDs in one of the coolers. Now the pictures have come out that he was lacing around the area there, but, you know, it looked like he was actually anybody that actually seen the photos of him, something was on him, and it looked like some suicide bomber stuff. But I don't think that's what he didn't. He did not himself detonate.
Walk up to a building with a suicide vest on the United States. Americans don't understand this. Al Qaeda knows this, right? So this is new and innovative.
That goes back to how fucking scary it can all be, because they ultimately don't care. Even this dude that gave himself to fucking ISIS. He doesn't give a fuck. Like, in that moment, he's amped himself up to that moment to kill these people in that fashion, like he done in New Year's.
Now, you don't have to walk upside of the building. You can walk in the building because of the advancement of the vest. The other thing is, in the United States, we haven't had Fideian attackers. Do you know what this is? I mean, you'll know when I explain it. If you fought in, like, I don't know, Ramadi, Fallujah, you've seen these. So the concept is the terrorist fights to the death. So he's not exactly a suicide bomber, but he will fight till either all of us are dead or all of his people are dead, right? So this can go on for multiple days, like the plan was for Mumbai, for example. So we think it's going to be a swarming attack, right? Multiple different attacks at one time across multiple cities. We think there will be suicide bombers just because some of the attackers went through suicide bomber training and they have these vests, right? And then we think there's these Fideian attackers.
I freak myself out all the time.
Who will carry on.
I can usually bring myself back.
The Fideian matters, right?
I can't bring myself back.
I want to say it was like 8 months ago.
Let me just rephrase that. So these guys are trained. And we already overlaid the video of their training, and they are going to fight until they're killed.
Yes.
There's no stopping them.
Exactly. And that matters, right? So I was watching this video, and it was a suicide bombing in Kabul years ago.
It's getting into scary
the bomber
talk.
blew up, okay? And then everyone starts moving in. The first responders move in, right? And then another guy walks in and blows up. We know this is a tactic, right? But if Americans don't understand this as a tactic and don't understand these attackers are going to fight to the death, think about that. So battle's going on. The attacker surrenders, right? He might have the suicide vest. We let our guard down. That man came to die, right? He's going to fight till he dies or you dies. So we can't let our guards down, and they know our weakness, right? So we have to be very careful that we don't have more people die in these second and third order effects of not knowing their intent.
What kind of places do you think they're going to target?
So this is what's complicated. So Al-Qaeda's preference, as you can imagine, is symbols of the U.S. or anything that causes economic damage, right? So Capitol is a great symbol. Capitol was actually in, I think the Capitol is, a lot of people are targeting it, but the Capitol was in their propaganda just as 9/11 when they were memorializing 9/11, right? So the Capitol matters. I feel like bridges or any kind of public transportation always matters because it puts costs against us and it causes fear. But here's where it gets complicated. So remember, the terrorists might have their goal is they're going to attack the metro in DC, right? But remember, some of these terrorists are going to be ISIS. And remember, they can change location. So the ISIS guy might go down the metro and say, there's not many people down here. I'll kill 20, but there's a event going on. I'm going to go up there, right? And because ISIS is a little different. ISIS just wants mass casualty. So
that's what we just saw.
It's going to be interesting how it works with terrorists that came from different backgrounds and when they get choice.
So some of these terrorist organizations are looking for very strategic stuff like U.S. Capitol, basically U.S. governmental infrastructure.
What goes against what she's saying is the person that just did that deed was from Texas and was, from the United States military and did not come in illegally.
And in elites. And then on the other hand, you have what I'm used to seeing when we were over there. They just look for the easiest, biggest target because they want to kill the most amount of people in the quickest amount of time and get the most press out of it.
Yep.
And so that would lead me to believe universities, churches, stadiums,
farmers markets, those type of things.
How many people, how many fighters do you think we can expect in each attack?
Well, the 1,000 is all of them. So we're calling it's an Al-Qaeda planned attack, but within those 1,000 terrorists, some of them are ISIS because they want ISIS to be blamed. We have a theory on it. I hate to throw out theories. We think the actual like.
It's the first time I think you've ever thrown out a theory.
I know. I just then people are like, she's crazy. I think the more of the fighter types are going to be ISIS because
I'm going to
then
go
if
out there and say
they're
all this
caught,
stuff, but I don't want people to think I'm crazy.
Then they talk. I'm ISIS. I think more of the suicide bombers are going to be Al Qaeda.
Will these attacks do you think these attacks will happen simultaneously throughout the United States, or will they be one day here, next day here, another one over here next week?
So they want them coordinated. I don't know if coordinated means all at the same time, or if coordinated means we do it Monday, we do it Tuesday, we do it Wednesday, we do it Thursday, we do it Friday, just do 5 straight days. But they want it coordinated. What's coordinated mean? And the other argument we have, does coordinated also mean U.S. and Europe at the same time? And is Europe all coordinated at the same time? So when they say coordinated, we don't know exactly what that means. So they could also be U.S. and Europe at the same time, which is complicated.
Do you think Europe will see mass casualties, or earlier you kind of mentioned that you think that the primary target in Europe is still U.S. embassies?
No, that's for the wave. So remember, there's a wave of embassy attacks, but then there's this multi-coordinated attack. It's a completely separate wave of attacks. So they're going to get the same October 7th attack in Europe as we're getting in the U.S., as planned right now anyway. And they also, 1,000 terrorists were supposedly trained for the U.S. and deployed, and 1,000 were supposedly trained for the Europe attack and deployed. The embassy plots are completely different with completely different trained terrorists.
Man, why haven't they hit
This
yet?
guy's mind.
Because the training takes the time. So for
They're
Israel,
here. They're here though.
supposedly. Yeah.
Okay,
They got here.
Let me ask, how long have they been here?
I'm not sure, but if we just do math quick, okay? Israel, they trained 500 terrorists, right? They got a longer timeline, but they were planning to train 500 in 3 months, right? 2 months. So they were going to train 500 in 2 months for Israel. So for Israel, they did it really quick, but it would have been half-assed. They luckily ended up with 1.5 years. But then remember, I told you they had to train 10,000 for Syria. And I think that gets completely ignored, okay? So they have this huge number. We just saw what the effect of it, right? So the 10,000 for Syria, and some went to Iraq, became the priority. And then we think the homeland attackers were in there. And then that's training's done too, if that makes sense. So they are training for multiple phases at the same time. So it takes time to get through all the training.
Man, this stuff scares the shit out of me. What do you think? Okay, you had mentioned earlier, we just got done talking about the significance of October 7th. How many other dates are there that it could potentially, if they're looking for that kind of, symbology or whatever you want to call it, how many dates are we looking at? Is it too many are there too many significant dates throughout the 20 years that we were over there? That we can't, we can't. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I know what you're saying.
How many dates are we looking at here?
Yeah.
Is it impossible? Is it 365? Is every day of the year after 20 years a potential date? Or are there some specific hard dates that you think that federal, state, local governments should be looking at?
Sure. Well, I think if we just talk about the October 7th investigation we did, we actually discussed 3 dates. We discussed the significance of October 7th being the day we started Operation Enduring Freedom. Remember when I said they started training in August? They actually started training on August 7th. They chose August 7th because that was the anniversary of the Tanzania and Kenya embassy bombings, okay? So they did choose even a historic date to start training, okay? And then when you go to 9/11, the majority of Americans, I don't even think the majority of the U.S. government knows why 9/11 was chosen. You'll get these stupid theories. It was start of the school year, or 11 means Allah, or something like that. It basically comes from 9/11 1922, and it was basically kind of, after the time of the British Mandate, and that was the first day they basically took a Westerner and said, this Westerner, and he ended up being a British and Jewish. You are in charge of kind of like this Palestinian type of mandate. And Al-Qaeda had cared about a date from 1922, and that's why they chose 9/11 to attack us. So there are dates that matter, right? But we focus on the dates that matter to us, and we forget to look at the dates that matter to them, right? So a lot of people say, well, it's likely then going to happen on the day Bin Laden was killed. Is it? When they're choosing some of like a date from 1922. So I think there's dates that matter.
I like
and
that.
I did some work and I forget one I picked. I think it was like June 5th or something. And it was some historic thing, right? But there, like you said, there's a lot to choose from. And the other thing you need to keep in mind is there's been this war going on in Syria, for a very long time. And a lot of things happen in Syria that have open wounds for these terrorists, right? And it's why a lot of these terrorists have come together is from the war in Syria. So they could just pick a date a terrorist was murdered in Syria, for example, right? Or even Hamza Bin Laden's wife was killed in the operation to kill her father. They could choose the date she was killed. So there's also just so many terrorist martyrs that they could choose dates from, within the last 20 years of war. So it's really hard to pick a date because then you're also anticipating something that doesn't happen. Even how 2025 is, right? So Al-Qaeda's planning the attack for 2025. But remember, I told you, Israel was planned for 2022. It got shifted a year. Now, if you are following that and it didn't happen, you're like, okay, the attack didn't happen. The information was bullshit, right? So if attack doesn't happen in 2025 and they push it a few months, then people put their...
It's like one of those prophets from ancient times. It's like, oh, next time. Maybe it was next Friday.
Again, and we need to be careful about stuff like that.
Yeah, that's true. I don't even know where to go from here. I mean, it just sounds it sounds inevitable that it's going to to
I know, and that's the thing. It just dawned on me too. When we did October 7th, this is really...
Hey, new members, if you're hearing me, go check out the video section. I think you'll dig it. There's some stuff in there, especially for you. Dig back a little bit, a couple of months, a lot of cool stuff.
Interesting, because this goes back to what you talked about earlier, passing threats and
more
leads
stuff
to
in
the
there.
government, which is almost impossible. People saw these Hamas terrorists planning and training in Afghanistan, and it got provided to Israel. When we did our investigation, some people gave us the reports they gave to the Israeli government, and we used them in our October 7th investigation. So we saw some of the stuff passed to the Israelis, so they knew at least Hamas was training for some big plot in Afghanistan. And I worry because same things are being passed to our government, and they're not taking it serious, right? And I don't know how what happened in Israel doesn't make you think twice, right? About, hey, we're making the same mistake.
Good pause point, which my girl Holly Berry chose a perfect time, of course. Well, if I can click it. Boom! Let me put you in here with 5 new folks.
Welcome to the party, pal.
And we got who to thank? Coming through here tonight. Who's going to grab some of those? Carrie RH, Lindsay Hendricks, Leia Baker, Stace, that's right, I nailed it. And Jules is hanging out. Holy shit, Jules, what's up? Hopefully once Stefan Stern starts, she's going to be in the courtroom. I maybe possibly get her on here as an actual guest. But welcome in here. And any new folks that don't know, beers in the chat. Bonnie knows, Tiff knows, and we have lots of cool things there. If you're beers in the chat, drop some beers, drop a liquor drink, drop a probably nothing, a murder church, a fiery pepper. Drop them in the chat, folks. Let them know real quick where you're at right here at Publicly Buzzed. Thank you all so much for hanging out.
I'm telling you like it is, baby.
We're not messing around. Not tonight.
You gotta fight for your right.
To party. That's right.
Dan's a fantastic man.
Dan is a fantastic man. I like that. Hit them all, baby, because we're feeling it. Holly Berry done set them off. Fuck, I had all the beers and forgot about work. Whoopsie. You know what? Screw work. You know what? It's Friday. Nobody needs work. Fuck work. We're getting deep in here. It could be the end of the world. We don't need all that. Who wants to talk about all that mess?
What are the I mean, we talked
Thank
a lot
you.
about passports.
Let me get
too,
you on this thing.
in your previous episode. Are they coming in straight to the U.S. With U.S. passports or passports with visas to the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
Or is the majority of it going to South America and then funneling up through the Darien Gap into?
Damn, we're like 3 away.
So, in my opinion, terrorists in general, just leaving Afghanistan, a lot of them are coming up through the Darien Gap to the border, and there was a big push, right? Get in the U.S. while you can. Now, not all those Al Qaeda's attackers, right? But they came in with fake
Now you're a
Afghan
real one.
passports. They came in with
You've been here the whole
Syrian
time.
passports, fake Turkish passports. Those are the kind of the three preferences because they're
It
easiest
is
to get.
Thursday somehow.
And then if
Right?
our border patrol agents, a lot of them haven't been overseas, right? If an
say that
Egyptian
weird.
shows up at the border with a Syrian passport, is he going to know that person was Egyptian? I mean, his passport says Syrian, right?
Yeah.
So we have that problem. But then Al Qaeda wants to embarrass us again, like they did with the 9/11 attackers, and they've trained clean terrorists, right, from like Saudi, Kuwait, Jordan, etc., and they want them to get legitimate visas, so we can't trust our system again. So we have both issues going on. The other issue too is a lot of these terrorists are coming up, right? And there still is the problem of lone wolves. There is the problem of we have terrorists in this country now where those members have never been in this country, right? We don't have any idea what their intent is. Islamic movement of Uzbekistan is a great example, right? They've sent terrorists from Afghanistan region here. Why, right? We have terrorists in this country that we don't even know their long-term plans against us because they're never really been a focus of ours, or we focused on them with this little piece where they did a few operations or training with Al Qaeda, right? But we don't know the intent, and maybe they just are force multipliers for Al Qaeda or the Islamic Army, but we lack the understanding.
Do you think these numbers are going to grow? I mean, we just saw I'm not spun up on the Syria thing, but it looked like we're done. Trump said we shouldn't even be there. Does that free up? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? But what I'm asking is, does that free up? You said they sent 10,000 new trained terrorists to Syria. So now that that's kind of done, are they coming here?
Well, the bad part with those 10,000, right, is there's battles going to continue. The Kurds, right? There's definitely going to be a war with the Kurds. So there's still going to be battles going on in Syria. But remember, Al Qaeda has all these waves. So they have the Caliphate wave. The Caliphate wave includes Syria, Iraq, Mali, Somalia, Burkina Faso. So those 10,000 will likely roll into either Iraq or they'll deploy to Africa. Okay. So they're likely not coming here just because they're in like the Caliphate wave and they've been trained in that wave, if that makes sense. It doesn't make sense to put them with the people you've trained to do the homeland attack or the embassy attacks, et cetera, just because you have enough bodies. And that's the thing. The number of recruits they can bring into Afghanistan, we've never seen anything like it. So there is no lack of bodies. There's no lack of terrorist volunteering. There's this really amazing documentary. Boone and I went and saw it, 6 or 7 months ago. It was called Jihad Rehab. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
Sadly,
Jihad
when it got put
Rehab?
out, I want to say it was originally at Sundance, and then there was a lot of news that people were exploiting the terrorists. Like the director was exploiting the terrorists, I kid you not. And then it got a bunch of hate, and it was almost like taken off of everything, and theaters like, we're not playing it. And so the director, she's kind of gone city to city and finances it herself and puts it out. So she was putting it, some people paid for her to come to the villages in Florida, and I was like, I want to see this. Let's drive up. So we went up to the villages, which is super happening, by the way. I mean,
I've heard all about the villages.
I've never been there. And one night there, I was like, I get it. 5-10 years, I might be buying a house here. It was
God,
it was a cool place. There was tons of people our age. So the fact that everyone's super old is also a lie. But of course, we're like older now. So anyway, it's a really interesting documentary. But what she does is she walks through basically 4 Al Qaeda terrorists.
Oh, wow. Just real quick. Brian Hinton from News Nation was
Yeah.
live
terror
on Bourbon
attack was,
Street.
but you can't even tell anymore. Everything's back open.
They just got everything back. crazy.
A lot of police out here, but
Anybody ever
wow,
been there?
The game
I ain't
Super
never
Bowl's
been there.
over.
Doesn't even
Notre
look that
Dame
packed
won.
well, as you
A lot
can
of Notre
imagine.
Dame fans. About to go live on News Nation here in a little while on Dan Abrams' show. Try to go down to the spot where the attack was. Apparently, there's a
That's
small
right, Simmy.
memorial that I haven't
You
seen
can't,
yet.
you can't let this falter our way of life. That's the damn truth.
Oh, this is the chief. This is a police chief.
Oh God, this chick's a fucking idiot. From all the clips I've seen, dude.
So we are going to agree. It's not a matter of forgetting. We're kind of tragic moment, but we are overcomers. I'm so glad people are here and we are able and confident we can keep it.
She had some of the worst quotes I've seen.
Enjoy everything that New Orleans has to offer. So thank you, y'all.
Yeah, I was talking to the locals here, and what was really interesting, just real quick, what was really interesting, I said, is it weird seeing people back here after such a horrific tragedy, or is it weird seeing the streets empty? They said, it was weirder seeing the streets empty. We mourn by celebrating life.
Well, I think that's would probably be more of what would accurate is that we mourn, but there is also a time in which we go and be
Look
restored.
at her makeup line. She's like, I'm going to be on TV for sure.
We want to respect all.
She's literally looks like she's wearing a mask. Like, I'm not trying to be rude, but it's legit. Look at the line. Like, and it's for TV, right? She knows she's going to be on TV. Like, it just shows again, like, how everything's got a layer of fake on it. Like, she's has to show face, and I don't, I'm not going against her for that necessarily, but at the same time, dude, she's had some pretty silly quotes, even giving terrorists props in one of these fucking
Officers are
interviews.
hurting, and so I'm going to go down this street and make sure each and every one of them get a hug from me if they want one, and to know that they are cared for as well.
It's
So
nice to
thank
see everybody
you.
back out, but it's also kind of weird
good.
thinking what happened here.
It's an unfortunate. I know it's their balance in that, right? So y'all, thank you. I'm gonna go
Thank you,
take
ma'am.
care
I
of it.
appreciate it.
Go
Thank
take
God.
care of
Appreciate it.
it.
Be safe, all right?
Y'all, thank you.
It's like that situation when you're like trying to leave. You're like, you're visiting somebody. You've been visiting them for a while now. It's been a long time, but it's also been visiting for a long time. I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna hit the road. No. Oh no. Oh, okay. Yeah. Another point. Yeah. Sure. Go ahead. Okay. Sure. No. All right. I'm gonna get out. No. No. She's not gonna let me. No. Okay. I'm just gonna go. I just gotta get back. I just gotta get back to the house. I just gotta get out of here.
Thank you. Thank you. I wasn't expecting to see the police chief. That's interesting. What time is it, Lauren? I just want to make sure. Okay.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. I'm gonna call it here. We've been going for quite a long time. That's an interesting. I'm gonna put that in the chat, and I'm also gonna make sure I get that in the description as well, because it's an interesting interview. It's fucking super interesting. Anybody that's new here that is unsure about Publicly Buzzed, come through tomorrow night, Feral Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, right here, the same time that this show started. I should have Dandy Savage here with me. Should be having a good time. We're going to be hanging out with Chris Dewitt, who's been here in the chat. He may still be here hanging out. And we're going to be watching some old school Rescue 911. Who remembers Rescue 911? It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good Feral Friday. The first Feral Friday of 2025. Come through. Have a good time. Again, thanks everyone for coming through. We've almost gotten through another wheel. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything also. I don't believe I am. Yeah, I'm going to keep doing... Holly Berry's still hanging out in here. Lisa knows what's up. Miss Shorty. He still knows what the hell's up. Chris Stewart, again, the guest tomorrow night. Yeah, I'm gonna keep doing. Dude, Publicly Buzz is a little bit different. If you're unfamiliar, I do a lot of serious stuff. I do a lot of comedy stuff, and I try to do some sort of mixture in between, a lot of mystery stuff. If you're not following me on X, you should be. I cover a lot of different stuff, whether that's current events or historical, interesting, crazy type events. Yeah. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. And I know we've got a lot of new folks in here. First live for Bill again. Thank you for coming through here. It's been dope. It's been really cool.
I'm telling you like it is, baby. I'm sober enough to know what I'm doing, and I'm drunk enough to really enjoy doing it.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
That's right.
This is gun country.
And that is the truth. Let me go in the Baker. Let me see if I can get him up here. Give Broken Baker a little love. See if I can find him here. Hold on. I'll redirect you into another dope stream real quick. But man, thank you all so much. Tonight has been freaking awesome. Thank you all. Come through tomorrow, Fro Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Give us another chance. Everybody, just love one another. The world's crazy. There's not a lot we can do, but what we can do is hold each other accountable to a higher standard and less like these fuckfaces that we see not doing the right thing all the time. Just be awesome. Love you guys. Let me get you out of here real quick. I got that saved up. Yeah, great stream. Lovely stream. Love you guys. Let's go. Have a great Friday. See you tomorrow night.
This bird